Our next speaker is Annie Earls. Please unmute.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, just try to speak up a little more, but welcome.
Thank you for the opportunity to be heard today. And I acknowledge that this is a hard time to be not only a parent and a student, but I know the superintendent and the school board members, I do not envy you. But I do want to share firsthand experience as a parent who has two kids in the area, one in private school and one in public school doing virtual. My first grader is in private school and she is thriving and happy, so full of life and joy and growing both relationally and educationally. And when COVID has come into their rooms, they use proven mitigation strategies and there has been no spread that has taken place the entire semester. It's been amazing. Meanwhile, I watched my special needs sixth grader, who is a CSEP student in the Virginia Beach School District, being asked to log into a computer from 10:20 to 4 o'clock, even though she has severe autism and can't even sit for more than 10 minutes. They're asking her to try to attend to the information she sees on a computer. It's impossible. So basically, she gets about 30 minutes of instruction a day. That's not on her IEP, and that's illegal. So what I'm saying is she is being asked to do something that does not fit her needs. At this point, she spends the rest of the day crying, hitting herself, biting her hands, and asking me over and over when the bus is coming. It's gotten so bad that her pediatrician just recommended that I put her on anxiety medications just to calm her down, which we did. A medication we hope to never use, but now we have no other options. She is not alone. I know another special ed family that has had to evacuate their home because of their son's violent tantrums in response to this change in his schedule, and they may have to put him in a home for their safety. These are real stories, guys. The back and forth face to face is cruel for these students. They're real. We've seen face to face work and be successful a stone throw away in Chesapeake, and I'm watching it right now in my own home for my other child. Just so we need to get our kids back in the classroom. Their teachers are essential. And just today, the Virginia Beach City Council met to discuss the vaccine rollout for essential workers. They defined an essential worker as essential to the functioning of society. So are teachers not essential? The list includes firefighters, police officers, grocery workers, but only one group is being asked to stay home: teachers. Not all of them, because I know lots of teachers want to be working. Teachers can go to the grocery store, yet grocery store workers can't send their kids to school while they work. So as a parent, I feel like we aren't being heard, and the teachers' unions and school boards' voices are louder than my child who can't speak. At what point am I obligated to seek legal action to allow her to be heard and her IEP to be followed? Please open schools. Do it now. You know it's
30
possible.
seconds.
You know it's safe, and it's happening all around us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Erica Scaffe. Please unmute.
Welcome.
Hi, it's Erica Scaife. So, members of the board, Dr. Spence, thanks for giving me a chance to speak tonight. I'm prepared to talk about what a terrible idea it would be to send kids into the buildings right now, but it turns out the health department stepped in and did that for me. I was going to talk about how far the district is from meeting the necessary mitigations to do that, but Dr. Spence told us that himself. What we need to remember here, though, is that Dr. Spence and his team were completely satisfied with an unsafe plan and making unsafe decisions. They only changed course when admonished by the health department. Think about that. Now Dr. Spence is requesting that you, the school board, abdicate your ability to vote on any new plans that he comes up with in the future, giving unchecked authority to an administration that doesn't have a history of making good calls, continuing this yo-yo of uncertainty and change from week to week, and pushing the bounds of what's safe until the health department has to step in and stop them. We elected you to be the check on the system, to listen to the voices of parents and teachers and to weigh those in your oversight of decisions. You allowing Dr. Spence to make unilateral decisions would silence our voices. And that's just not going to fly here, not during a pandemic where so much is at stake. So what I now want to ask you is not to give up your role in making sure our kids are safe, not after what's gone on this week. There's nothing our family wants more than for our kids to be back in school face to face. We chose option one for that reason, but more importantly, because at the time we trusted that the district would make safe, cautious decisions about learning in person. We never imagined that the district might decide to send them back into schools right as this pandemic spikes. Our kids want to go to school in person, but even they know it's smarter to learn at home for now. But I can tell you, virtual learning is working. Thanks to our teachers, virtual learning is working well. My children's teachers have done an amazing job. They've been nimble every single time the plans have changed and killed themselves creating new ways to teach virtually, keeping kids engaged and learning. It's working well, and you're not hearing that enough. Teachers are being told that they're failing miserably and that they just don't want to work, and nothing could be farther from the truth. Anyone saying that should be ashamed of themselves. School is different this year, and we all wish it wasn't. But kids are learning that in the face of adversity, they can adapt. They can rise to new challenges with resilience. Our kids aren't falling behind because there is no behind right now. There are no established benchmarks for learning during a global pandemic. Our district is known for excellence and innovation, and that's exactly what is making virtual learning work. And once this pandemic is behind us, I have no doubt that these same teachers will again kill themselves to get our kids where they need to be. So I'm asking you to stop this every 3-week back and forth. Don't leave our kids worrying each week what the next week will hold. There's enough of that going on outside of school. Let the teachers and kids maintain the rhythm that they finally settled into.
30
and if
seconds.
nothing else, please don't give up your voice in these decisions. Educators are drawing the line, and my children and I stand with them. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Speaker number 20 is not online. We're going to go to speaker 21. Michael Sataltik, please unmute.
Welcome.
Michael Staltizdiak, please unmute.
Try 22. Same family.
Wait, hold on. He's trying to unmute.
Thank you. I want to briefly highlight a few things before getting to my main point tonight. As it relates to the data presented to you last week, most of it comes from early in the pandemic, and most of it, including the first 14 articles, come from research conducted in other countries. Countries where in terms of just primary education, school sizes range from an average of 150 students per school in Norway to 366 in Australia, with very few countries exceeding 450 students per school. Virginia Beach elementary schools average 583 students, with Glenwood topping out at over 1,000. That means we have more faculty and staff per school and more contacts, even at partial capacity, than any of these studies accounted for. There is research that shows children do carry high levels of coronavirus, and that as many as 1/3 of them have been shown to be asymptomatic. Research that shows going back to school now would unfairly impact many low-income and minority families. There is even research from professionals like psychologist Maggie Mulqueen that says returning to an in-person learning environment will be so unrecognizable to students that it may cause mental health issues like anxiety, fear, and mistrust. Most of the mental health models that compare virtual to in-person assume the type of structure that existed before the pandemic. The point is, there's lots of information out there supporting both sides of the argument, which brings me to the topic I wanted to share tonight: confirmation bias. Most presenters at each of these school board sessions have already reached a conclusion, and now each of us are finding information to support our cause. As a result, it can be difficult to weed through all the facts. So how do you choose what course of action to take? It comes down to objectively weighing the advantages and disadvantages of each plan. You heard last week the disadvantages of staying virtual. I have read easily 50 articles that show the same disadvantages can or will occur in a concurrent or face-to-face model, but there are other disadvantages that are likely to only occur under a hasty return to in-person learning before it is safe to do so. One disadvantage is the severe impact it will have on the mental health of teachers and staff. Accounts from other U.S. school districts so far indicate that by returning too early, you will double teachers' workloads in instances where they are expected to teach in a concurrent model. You will see an increase in resignations and early retirement, foster burnout and disenfranchisement, create long-term staffing and tenure concerns, and end up with immediate staffing issues, which may cause you to close anyway since there are so few substitutes. Also, going back in person will absolutely increase the risk of transmission and death, if for no other reason than you are increasing possible contact points. Not just in school, but according to a recent article from the Journal of the American Medical Association, quote, school reopening increases out-of-school transmission because students and staff mix with others and because reopening increases parents mixing as they return to work and spend more time outside the home. In parts of the United States where baseline prevalence is higher, such effects may be worse, end quote. This speaks to the link between high community and school transmission levels. Finally, we know that with increased transmission comes an increase in total deaths in adults, and yes, even in children. What we don't know, or are just beginning to find out, is how much more we risk. An article that appeared in Forbes just 2 weeks ago on December 28th had this to say, quote, kids don't get sick from COVID-19. Early in the pandemic, this was one of the false claims that far too many parents and even medical professionals were quick to embrace and repeat. Before we learned more, before children began dying from multi-system inflammatory syndrome, and before we started to recognize the signs of long-term effects resulting from COVID-19 infection, end quote. According to the CDC website, long-term effects include things like inflammation of the heart muscle, lung function abnormalities, acute kidney injury, hair loss, smell and taste problems, sleep issues, difficulty with concentration, memory problems, depression, anxiety, and changes in mood. Will all children experience one of these long-term impacts?
30 seconds.
Probably not. But the real answer is we just don't know enough about COVID to be sure. The best course of action going forward is to work together as a community, not as individuals, to make decisions about what is best. The final thought I want to leave you with today is that based on everything you have heard, yes, there will probably be some impact to kids not returning to school now, but next fall, the kids will be back. Who won't be back in the fall? Not just because of early retirement and resignations, but because of long-term health issues and loss of life that being face-to-face during a COVID pandemic can cause.
And that is
Thank you.
time.
Thank
Our
you.
next speaker is Jana. Please unmute.
Hi, my name is Jana, and I am a student at Killam High School in ATC. First, I want to thank you for putting me first by having us do virtual learning instead of in person. You may recognize my name because I previously spoke to the school board about having swine flu when I was free and how it impacted my life. I have narcolepsy, and research shows there's a good chance that I developed it because I have the swine flu I had. But that's not what I wanted to talk about today. My mom has made the decision to not send me in, like so many parents have. I see my friends online and stay home because I know that being sick could really hurt me or my dad, who only has one lung. The problem is that our teachers did not really get that choice. Our counselors didn't, our bus drivers didn't, and so many of the people that work at our schools didn't. Sometimes even if they had reasons like me or my family, they still don't get the choice. So they have to make the choice to leave or risk being sick, and that's not fair to them. It's not fair to the kids. I have had so many great teachers and counselors, so I don't want any of them to have to leave because they're at risk. With having narcolepsy, I've had to get extra help from teachers and my counselor in middle school, Miss Watts. She made sure that everything would be set up so that I could do well. When I stayed after school for debate last winter, I had this super nice activity bus driver that would make sure to drop me off at my driveway when it was dark and make sure I was safe. All the teachers I had were so important to me and helped me out, and I'm scared that if we make teachers go in when it's not safe, that we will lose them. And while they all cared about me and my friends, I can't really blame them for leaving. I know that I want to stay safe and not deal with any more long-term effects like I've had to. They have the right to do the same, but we can't keep driving away all these great teachers by treating them like their safety isn't important. Their safety is just as important as mine. And with new variants coming here, with numbers being so high, it's not safe. They always protect it and made sure that I was safe. It's time for us to stand up for their safety. And going to ATC, I went back for 2 days. And when I did, I was terrified. I didn't even want to take off my mask to take a drink of water because I was so scared that I would catch COVID and bring it home to my dad. Thank you. The educators are drawing a line and I stand with them. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Tanya Rivers. Please unmute.
Welcome.
I'm speaking as an option 1 parent of 2 elementary age children that attend 2 different schools in our city. I reluctantly agreed to option 1 originally because there was a ceiling, a cutoff point in which it would be deemed that schools would not be safe for face-to-face instruction anymore. We had metrics, numbers to guide us and let us know where we stand. Now those very numbers will be disregarded in favor of burden or absences within the schools. By the time a staff member or student needs to be absent due to COVID, the virus has already spread through the classroom. How many more educators do we have to lose to this virus? What is deemed an acceptable amount of deaths before reverting back to virtual? Not only has the plan pivoted, not all parents and staff are permitted to change their option. At the meeting over the summer, it was stated by Dr. Sentz, in order to change the plan that, quote, we would need to give the people a chance to absorb this information and then make a different selection, end quote. Why is this not the case now? Parents are being told there is a wait list for option 2. What are the options for these families? Most staff members are not even being given a choice. This is unacceptable. Mental health has been a topic that has been used to justify the return to face-to-face instruction. What about those students that struggled with face-to-face due to the mitigation strategies and new rules that are in place? My son is one of those students. He attends the same school and is in the same grade as Dr. Spence's son, whom at the last meeting had glowing reviews of face-to-face instruction. My son paints a very different picture. This is no fault of his wonderful, amazing, and dedicated educators. There are mitigations that need to take place right now. Socialization is not what it was. Instead of think tanks, they are spaced 3 feet apart all over the classroom and must remain at their desks. They cannot use shared materials or manipulatives. During lunch, they are not permitted to talk until they are done eating and their masks are on, and they are constantly monitored. These new rules and mitigation strategies are stressful for students who fear getting in trouble for something as simple as being too close to a classmate. My son loves school, to the point he gets upset about missing a single day. During face-to-face instruction, he would frequently say he did not want to go. He lost weight because he was not eating, and he was frequently upset and riddled with anxiety. Face-to-face is not the answer right now and is causing mental health concerns for students and staff as well. The pendulum swings both ways. Are there challenges to virtual learning? Of course, just like there are challenges to face-to-face learning. Do students get frustrated with virtual learning? Yes, but those frustrations will be felt in the classroom as well. As you well know, community transmission is at an all-time high. Just by listening to the stories from my children's classes about what they did over winter break through Zoom, I can tell you that community gathering guidelines are not being adhered to. These same students will potentially be entering classrooms in days. And you're telling me this virus will not spread through schools? That makes absolutely no sense. Children do not and cannot, and many cannot adhere to mitigation strategies. They are constantly pulling down their masks, chewing on them, or taking them off to sneeze or cough. Staying distance from their classmates is extremely challenging. This virus is airborne. Placing 18+ children in a classroom for 6 to 7 hours with windows that cannot open during a time of high community spread is irresponsible. As I stated last time I spoke here, by opening schools to face-to-face instruction too soon, you're inviting a threat in instead of protecting students and staff from it. Now, with the new plan proposal, not only are you inviting that very threat in, you're rolling out the red carpet, offering a glass of sweet tea, and asking it to stay a while. This plan is not safe for students or staff. I urge you to delay going face-to-face until the metrics are in a downward trend and staff have the opportunity to be fully vaccinated. A return to face-to-face on February 1st does not allow enough time for this to occur. We need tangible metrics, an upper limit, a guide so parents, students, and educators know what will happen. These decisions need to be brought before the board. No single
30
person should
seconds.
have authority over this important choice. Thank you to all the educators for your hard work and dedication. I stand with you.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Victoria Morlang. Please unmute.
Welcome.
Well, thank you. Good evening. I don't want my virtual speech to be misconstrued as fear. In fact, I want face-to-face schooling for my children. Previous obligations did permit me from staying, but myself and many others stood outside prior to the board meeting in solidarity for students' mental health and students tragically lost to suicide this year. I actually struggled even wanting to speak after the email today. Does our opinion matter? I know Mrs. Holtz has made up her mind, and it doesn't matter what I say, she's not going to change it. How many other board members are actively listening to us right now? I am a nurse, and I've been working throughout this pandemic. At the beginning, healthcare providers, we were nervous. We were running out of PPE. We were exhausted, both mentally and physically. Some providers did not see their family out of fear. However, with the research and safety mitigations that we put in place, we continue to learn more every day. I feel safe. I feel safe as a nurse. I am essential. Teachers are essential. As a nurse, but more importantly, as a mom, I feel safe with the mitigations that are in place for my children to return to school. I want my children back in school. These years are critical. My son is currently at Plaza in the IB program. The program is a rigorous instructional program that has set high expectations for their students. This school, along with other schools in the Virginia Beach, have set high expectations for their students. Students will rise to the expectations if they're given the chance. They're just not given the chance this year. My son Nicholas is struggling with his lack of attention due to the amount of computer-based learning each day. As with each middle school student, he is in front of the computer 6 to 10 hours a day. You've heard many parents stand in front of you telling you that this is not good for the students. The students need to be in school. He needs the interaction that Plaza is focused on teaching him. I'm aware of the safety standards in place. I have heard that school is not the same. My children are okay with this. It is heartbreaking to hear your honor student tell you that he is not learning anything this year. I know all students are on the same page. However, if one is falling behind, are they all falling behind? Is Virginia Beach supposed to be ahead of the curve? Because this is not happening this year. My daughter is in 11th grade and she's not doing well with virtual learning. She's isolated, she's depressed. I know that the board has heard that COVID is not causing mental illness, but the research shows mental illness cases have increased over 30% this year. The emergency departments are overwhelmed with mental illness. We need to help these children. Schools are a safe environment for children. Schools provide meals, social interaction, and they have adults that the children trust. I will not continue to go on and on, as I know you guys have heard this at this point. However, I support face-to-face learning and know that schools are not a hotspot for COVID transmissions. Children and adolescents are not the super spreaders, and with the mitigations that are in place, these children need to be back in school. Some teachers are going to say that the school room is not safe. I struggle with that. I care for patients every day. I hold their hand. I wipe their tears, and I still feel safe. Being a nurse has eliminated the 6-foot distance rule. I go to work every day. I have went to work every day since March. I still come home
30
to my family
seconds.
every night. I will not continue to give you the research that you have read. You have seen that schools are safe. Put students first. Isn't this the school board's core value? The safety mitigations are working. Reconsider your stand on face-to-face schooling. Let students back in. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Joe Kraft. Please unmute.
Welcome.
Joe Kraft, please unmute.
Hello?
Is this,
Hello?
yeah,
Can you hear me?
we're
Can you hear me
expecting,
now? Can you hear me?
this is Mr. Kraft?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
All right. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen of the school board and Dr. Spence. My name is Joe Kraft. I'm the father of 2 graduates of your Bayside Health Science Academy. My oldest child, Carrie, is an ER physician treating critically ill COVID patients daily. She calls frequently upset because she is writing comfort orders for patients that are dying. I will start by saying do not follow the dangerous precedent set by Chesapeake returning to in-person learning at this time. This virus is an efficient killer of people, young and old. It should be respected as such. The virus has mutated at least 3 times, and a 4th mutation was identified this last weekend in Japan. We know that at least 1 mutation is more rapidly transmitted. We do not know if the virulence of this mutation is greater than the original form of the virus. I am a registered nurse treating critically ill patients at a VA hospital. I also served on a COVID relief team in New York and New Orleans in March and April. I was stacking bodies 2 deep in refrigerated trucks. I have seen the death rate. Original metrics in Virginia Beach use 265 cases a day as the threshold to go virtual learning. The numbers now today in the Eastern region alone were 1,179. 7-day rolling average was 1,205, and there is a 21% positivity rate currently. The argument that I've heard about using numbers is the data sets are more reliable and we know more about the virus today. We know that is false information. With the virus changing weekly, data sets are only as good as today's information. The second argument is that the spread in school-age children is less. Again, if the virus is mutating rapidly, information just a week old is out of date. I will say it again, your data set from a week ago is out of date. This is the most dangerous time of the pandemic. According to Carlo Cucci from Virginia Teachers United, there are only a few school boards nationwide tracking school transmissions. One of these is St. Charles, Missouri. Their numbers released showed 1,300 community cases directly related to school-based transmissions. 970 of these were among students and staff. The new COVID 2B11 variant is twice as likely in children aged 2 to 16 to pass on the virus by being asymptomatic, meaning showing no signs. My next item is the request by Dr. Spence to be the sole decision maker on returning to school February 1st without a vote from the school board. While I have great respect for Dr. Spence, he is a PhD trained administrator, not a medical physician. As the virus continues to mutate, we need medical professionals to advise you, the school board, weekly to allow you to make informed decisions about a return to face-to-face instruction. Currently, hospitals, nursing homes, and jails do not allow visitors because increasing positivity rates in COVID-19 infections. To voluntarily put staff and students back in school is akin to playing Russian roulette. The best guess is that students will be 4 to 6 months behind because of virtual instruction. That will need to be borne out with standardized testing when the students return to face-to-face instruction. My solution to you is to have all teachers and staff vaccinated with a COVID vaccination series and to wait 1 week after the second inoculation to begin return face-to-face. Readopt the elongated
30
school year,
seconds.
better known as year-round schooling, scared parents and students in the past because it sounded like more days of instruction. In reality, it was not more days. It did, however, leave longer breaks between quarters. During those breaks, remediation and enrichment sessions were scheduled for students who needed the extra instruction or wanted to rise above. Teachers volunteered for these sessions and received additional pay. This is my opinion for the safest way to return and give students the opportunity to catch up. Thank you for your attention and time.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Our next speaker is Elena Kemper. Please unmute.
Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening. I'm speaking tonight to request that VBCPS continue to rely upon the current metrics until such times as staff has had the opportunity to receive COVID vaccinations. There has been a vast amount of data presented that supports both for and against this proposed plan. I believe it is important that we all recognize that data can be manipulated to support any opinion. However, the experiences of your staff cannot be manipulated. Behind all of this data is the real life experiences of your staff. For me personally, a close relative accounts for one of the thousands of deaths from this horrific virus. Mom Whipple died in late September within 9 days of her first symptom. Her husband of 58 years never got to say goodbye, rather had to sit on the other side of a telephone as the medical staff performed chest compressions while he decided if it was time to let her go, then sat for 13 hours alone with no one to comfort him. Many of us have known this pain. Other staff members have battled COVID, with some losing the battle, watched friends face lifelong complications, or watched as the children of their family and friends were hospitalized from complications of COVID, including at least 2 local teens. It is very difficult for staff to trust any data when the data used does not represent current conditions in our area, but their life experiences indicate there may be flaws in the data, especially as it relates to spread by children. As a parent, I am receiving numerous emails daily with only SOLs and sports beginning. Just this week, a student said he had a runny nose and cough and thought he was losing his sense of smell and taste, but the parent told him not to worry about it. Without testing, this student would not be included on our dashboard, nor would the many students and staff sent home to quarantine after an exposure in the classroom and later developed COVID. Only the original positive person would be reported. The infectious disease doctor at the workshop made it clear that his opinion reflects his best understanding of the information at this time, while acknowledging the information has ever evolved these past 12 months. Just a few months ago, members of the advisory committee spoke against our current metrics and indicated it could be years before we could return, yet now we are down to just a few short weeks until we can safely return vaccinated. This leads to another significant concern. Providing high-level instruction to all students will be threatened when decisions are not made that protect staff. An ever-increasing rate of staff are opting to leave the profession either for different employment or retirement. Moving to force a return during high community spread promises to result in even more staff leaving the profession. This legacy will continue to negatively impact student learning long after community infection rates decline. Staff was disappointed not to hear impassioned discussion about the lengths taken to lobby with state and local officials to secure staff vaccines while robustly discussing a return to in-person teaching last week. Educators just across the border in Currituck, North Carolina, were being vaccinated just the day after our leaders insisted we needed to return as soon as possible without immunization and no timeline in sight. Where was the insistence that staff received the same protections the doctors celebrated while telling us how safe we would be to return without it? I ask you to not lose focus of the needs and
30
mental health of
seconds.
your staff too. Without us, there will be no one to continue to serve the mental health of students tomorrow or in the future, just as we have every day this school year. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Alice Kraus. Please unmute.
Welcome.
Ms.
Hello?
Kraus.
Yes, please proceed. Welcome.
Hi, thank you. On October 9th, 1998, my 17-month-old daughter and I went to Owl Creek Tennis Center to watch my husband, Doug Spurlock, play in a tennis tournament. At 35, he was young, healthy, happy, and in great shape. He played and taught tennis for a living. 1 hour later, I watched in complete disbelief and horror as he collapsed on the tennis court. The paramedics worked on him for 8 long minutes before they put us in the ambulance for a ride to Virginia Beach General Hospital at regular speed and no sirens. When I got the autopsy report, I learned that he died of a heart arrhythmia due to an enlarged heart. It explained to me that he likely had a virus at some point which caused inflammation, which led to the arrhythmia which caused his death. Last Friday, I made the heartbreaking decision to pull my junior and senior from their varsity wrestling season. After reading about heart issues popping up in kids and adults after having COVID, we decided the risk to their future health just wasn't worth it. The study that hit hard was from Ohio State University, where they looked at 26 student athletes who recently had COVID and previously had healthy hearts. 15% of them had evidence of myocarditis, while 30% had cellular damage or swelling. Half of the kids with myocarditis had asymptomatic COVID cases. This is the same heart damage that caused my husband's arrhythmia and death. While there's clearly more research to be done, my concern is that we just don't know what we don't know, and it's irresponsible to assume, based on the lack of information, that COVID is not causing long-term damage in our kids. I question how many kids and adults are out there who have had asymptomatic or symptomatic COVID cases and have no idea that they now have a heart issue. Of the 3 kids I personally know who have had COVID and post-COVID EKGs, all 3 show some sort of abnormality. One of the 3 had an asymptomatic case. This virus is so new with so many unknowns, and I don't want anyone to live through what I did, watching my young, healthy husband die in front of me of a condition that could have been prevented. And until we do more thorough, widespread testing, we won't have an accurate, clear picture of who's getting it, how they're getting it, and what their long-term effects are. I do believe there's a way to get our kids back to school safely, and I want that more than anything. But clearly not when the numbers are higher than ever, our hospitals are bursting at the seams, and our health department and medical professionals are running ragged trying to keep up. Getting them back in the classroom should be a top priority for all of us, which makes what we do in our private lives to stop the spread and bring the numbers down so important. This is a serious, out-of-control global pandemic, and we have to protect our students, staff, and their futures. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Jeffrey Feld. Please unmute.
Welcome.
Thank you. Not one day since this pandemic started have teachers complained about how much work was being asked of them. In fact, one can argue that teaching is one of the professions throughout this pandemic that was asked to completely rethink and change how they do their job overnight. And they did it. Many without additional resources, training, or support. However, once again, teachers rose to the occasion to provide familiarity, comfort, and learning to the children in our community. Luckily, VBCPS could not have been better equipped. The schools have provided every single child with an electronic device, availability for hotspots to those who need, food for anyone with a child in school, and of course, tireless teachers working above and beyond to provide some sense of normalcy and love to their students, in addition to, of course, an education. VBCPS was lucky enough to be in a position where they could have put all of their efforts into supporting teachers, students, and families for virtual learning, but instead, some individuals decided to waste precious time and energy to resist this. This in turn has caused your teachers to get frustrated with their employer and the community, as they have to defend their right for safety and protection of themselves and the students. Some of you say everyone is given a choice to do what's best for them and their families. Well, my wife, who is a school employee, was not given a choice, as she loves her job and the students that she educates and the staff around her. We chose for our children to be virtual so they can have consistency in education. And we feel it isn't safe for them to return based upon the infection rate within our community. And probably, even more importantly, we are lucky enough to know that our boys will be okay with a year of school that looks and feels different. We understand there are some students who absolutely need to be taught face-to-face for whatever reason. So if by keeping our children home, it is a little safer for those who need to be face-to-face, not those who want to be, not prefer to be, but actually need to be, we are happy to do our part. My children have been home socially distancing from all of their friends for 10 months now, but they understand the big picture for our community. Our job as a society, as a community, is to help one another and protect our most vulnerable. If we cannot do that, then what is the point of a community? Many individuals say that you hear the concerns of teachers, but from my perspective, nobody is. Being in the medical field, but not a virologist, and from my personal perspective, this virus initially appears not to affect children as badly or easily as adults, but we need to remember teachers are not children. We need to protect the teachers, and if we do not, then our schools will either have less qualified teachers or no one to teach the children. Additionally, let's talk about the mental health issue. Teachers have been saying this for years, but it must not have fit into some people's agenda at the time. Well, now let's find the funds to get more behaviorists
30
and counselors
seconds.
to help those students in need. As far as the mental health of teachers, I think having teachers who are overworked, underappreciated, afraid of the work environment, afraid that nothing is anonymous regarding to comments or feedback, and teaching face-to-face and virtually at the same time has led many teachers to retire early or just quit outright. I was told of a teacher who left the field to become a nanny. She could be in a safer environment. This is terrible for the future in education for Virginia
And
Beach
that is time.
and the students. I just hope that everyone listening to me today
And that
actually
is
takes the
time.
concerns of the staff into
Thank you.
consideration.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Our next speaker, number 29, we cannot get connected to, so we're going to go to number 30, Alexandria Sadler. Please unmute.
Welcome.
Hello, school board members. My name is Alexandra Sadler, and I am 9 years old. I'd like to thank the doctors for recommending kids return to school. The effects that virtual learning have on me are incredible. I am very distracted doing virtual school, and it makes it very hard to see friends and try to participate. All kids need proper education, and in order to get that, they need to be at school, speaking to each other in person. I don't understand why school is closed again, because everybody is taking the necessary precautions and going to great lengths to make sure the school is clean, every member of the school is safe, and to make sure kids can get actual learning. I feel that all kids deserve to be in school, get proper learning, and collaborate with kids their own age face-to-face while learning. Please stop giving hope, then ripping it away. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Samuel Sadler. Please unmute.
Welcome.
Hello, school board members. My name is Samuel Sadler, and I'm also 9 years old. Thank you, doctors, for saying you believe we can be safe in school. This is about virtual school. I have questions and just things to say. One thing I'm concerned about is why Virginia Beach school leaders closed down schools again. I'm so happy to be in school in October. One reason I want to go back to school is I want to actually feel educated. I definitely don't feel educated when I'm looking at a screen all day. I feel it is annoying to basically get on Zoom every 10 minutes. Also, I don't like virtual school because I can't see my teacher and friends like I normally can. Another reason is it can hurt our eyes and especially our brains. The way it's hurting my eyes is when I am doing my schoolwork, I have to turn the brightness button almost all the way down. And it's hurting my brain because I find it hard to be focused and I'm not really sure what I'm supposed to be doing sometimes. I don't understand why my older brother still gets to go to private school every day and I don't. Honestly, I don't even like these things, Chromebooks, in our house. When my class is on Zoom, everybody is breaking up. Also, we've gotten messages like, this may be very dangerous, be careful, which makes me feel scared. I know people have been getting sick with COVID, but how many people are getting very sick? I feel safer in school than I ever have before because we are staying healthier and they are protecting us, staying apart, and washing our hands a lot. Please let us back in school next Tuesday. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Zachary Sadler. Please unmute.
Welcome.
Good evening, school board members. My name is Zachary Sadler, and I'm 11 years old. I think kids that are not in school need to get back in school. I believe this for many reasons. One reason is the health officials say that COVID does not affect children nearly as bad as the elderly and people with significant health risks. Another reason is that it is very hard for kids to do virtual learning because there's so much screen time involved. Also, kids want to be together in person, not on a computer staring at each other. When I was in virtual learning for the remainder of last school year, I had a horrible time. I feel extremely sympathetic towards my brother and sister because I get to go to private school 5 days a week, and their school closed again, leaving them stuck on a computer all day. I really don't understand why it is safe for me to go to school, but my little brother and sister have to return to virtual learning. School is a wonderful place for learning, making friends, and being with nice teachers. I hope this statement makes a difference and that all kids can go back to school where they deserve to be. Kids are clearly suffering. Please return them to school next week as recommended. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Ginger Villanueva. Please unmute.
Welcome.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, my name is Ginger Villanueva, and I'm a registered respiratory therapist of over 27 years. I was asked to speak by several friends who teach in the Virginia Beach public school system, but I'm also here to speak on behalf of the overwhelmed healthcare system. I signed up to get in front of this and other diseases. I signed up to take care of sick people and have people cough and sneeze and wheeze on me as my career. Teachers did not. Sniffles and sneezes and the occasional boo-boo. That's all they signed up for. Frontline workers are now getting the vaccine, with Virginia Beach public school system workers slated to begin in February. Why not wait a few more weeks for the first round of vaccinations, then set a date for a return to face-to-face instruction once everyone's been vaccinated? Again, I ask, what's the rush with so many lives at risk? Community infection rates are the highest they've ever been. ICUs and hospitals are full. Don't have a car accident in Hampton Roads right now, or a kidney stone. You might go to a full emergency room and have to be transported to another hospital that may have space for you. I've seen this happen in recent weeks. With twice weekly testing for months in the long-term care facility in which I work, infections skyrocketed a week after Thanksgiving in a matter of days. We were able to catch them day by day, test by test, isolate the infected, and protect the others. There's no such system in place in schools. Infections will go unchecked. This past summer, my 17-year-old daughter, now a senior, was positive with COVID. She was sick for days, her chest hurt, and I could not be around her. I have asthma since childhood and also could not risk taking it to the residents, the compromised patients to whom I provide care daily. She's young, healthy, a vegan, and yes, she beat it easily. However, her dad got it and was hospitalized for 4 days, and he's a healthy 40-something-year-old gentleman. Not sure if he would get through it each day or end up on a ventilator. He was terrified. Her 82-year-old grandmother got it as well, and thankfully, she was the one who was virtually asymptomatic. It could have easily gone the other way. There is no rhyme or reason why one healthy individual gets it and dies, and an older person will be asymptomatic. The spread of this disease is a numbers game. With the numbers significantly higher now than what was considered safe when school started, what has changed to deem face-to-face suddenly safe? Children will spread this among themselves asymptomatically. Teachers and school workers will get sick. Everyone within the school system will bring this home with them unknowingly. Family members will be lost. Again, I ask, what's the rush? As a mother of 2 high schoolers, I can empathize with parents concerned with their kids' futures. I get it. This is not ideal. My kids want to be in school. They want to be with friends. But can we also sympathize with the almost 400,000 Americans who have lost their lives to this pandemic
30 seconds.
and the family these deaths destroyed unnecessarily? Science functions on data, but only valid data will help us to make the right choices. Using statistics that fits one's agenda, like data from other countries who held to much more stringent lockdowns and therefore have been able to resume lives that are more normal at this point, this does not represent the way in which the pandemic has been managed here. The willful ignorance of those making decisions for so many runs the risk of losing countless more lives.
And that is time.
I stand with the teachers.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Holly Edwards. Please unmute.
Welcome.
Good evening, Chairperson Rye, Dr. Spence, and members of the school board. I have to be honest that I'm frustrated with being back here again to discuss school board plans for face-to-face instruction. I'm here today to let you know that I oppose the plan being submitted today for returning to face-to-face. Please note my wording here. I'm not referring to this plan as a reopening plan. Our children are in school. Schools aren't closed. Our teachers are working harder than ever. VBCPS administration has squandered months to try to bring students and staff back in unsafe conditions rather than accepting the fact that we are living in a global pandemic. A pandemic that is taking 4,000 lives per day in the United States. We could have been focused on improving virtual learning and enhancing mental health supports for students who need it, rather than squabbling meeting after meeting to give the appearance of us being ahead of the curve. We're mere weeks away from vaccinations being available for teachers and staff. Why would we risk putting our staff at risk so close to them being able to receive a vaccination? The newest rendition of this plan delays opening another 2 weeks, but provides no definitive metrics for when schools should be open or closed. It puts this power in the sole discretion of the superintendent when it appears obvious that Dr. Spence did not even collaborate with Dr. Lindsay and the Virginia Beach Department of Health to develop the plan. Giving the superintendent such authority is a dangerous precedent to set. The Virginia Department of Health has not been able to complete effective contact tracing for weeks, possibly even months, due to the high levels of transmission. How will 2 weeks allow the school and the Virginia Beach Department of Health to become more effective at this? 2 weeks does not allow staff to be fully vaccinated. The proposed plan, even with a delay, is illogical and dangerous. Passing this plan would be a complete abdication of your duty as elected school board members. I fear that the school board and the administration continue to not listen to teachers and staff. Without them, schools are empty buildings and empty Zoom rooms. I'm concerned that you seriously risk losing quality teachers now and in the future by continuing to have this back and forth discussion week after week. It's emotionally exhausting, and it's borderline abusive as an employer to do this to your staff. Educators are drawing the line, and as a voter and as a parent of a Virginia Beach school students, I stand with them. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Shelby Lamb. Please unmute.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am. Welcome.
Okay, my name is Shelby Lamb. I graduated last year from Princess Anne. I'm 19 currently. I was in IB from 6th grade to 11th grade. And today I'm going to read a letter that was submitted by a teacher. Okay. Dear school board members, after hearing the literacy data presented at the school board meeting, it does sound very concerning, and it is. However, while virtual instruction is not the same as in-person instruction during a normal year, there are other issues that are affecting the literary data. Did you know in spring we were told we were not allowed to do any live instruction? That means our students received no small group instruction. As you know, small group instruction is where students learn to read. This is the reason our data is low. Our literary data isn't low due to just virtual instruction. It's low due to no instruction in learning to read during those 3 months. We see a summer slide in just 10 weeks. So of course the data is low when you more than double the summer slide. Did you know that this year we were required to automatically ID kids that were ID'd from last year, whether or not they passed the benchmark? There are students included in the data that exceeded the benchmark. I agree, it would be absolutely better to have students in person for instructing during a normal year. However, below are some facts that you may not be aware that affect our students' instruction in person. Did you know specialists, including reading specialists and other support staff, are the ones covering lunch duties? Did you know they were being used to cover those duties for multiple hours of their day, limiting the time they could work in groups with students and teachers? However, during virtual instruction, more students are being seen by specialists and support staff because they aren't required to cover lunch duties. Did you know that in many schools, small group instruction can only include 2 to 3 students per group? That's all they could fit at the table, spaced 3 feet apart. What that means is in a class of say 20 students, a max of 9 to 12 students a day could be seen in small groups. In an ideal class where you have equal numbers of low, average, and high, the lowest students in the class are seen daily, and average to higher students were only seen 1 to 3 days a week. However, this is especially unfair when classes are stacked with a large amount of lower students or in a Title I school where the majority of classes are below level. So in classes like that, you could be a below level student and not get small group instruction from your daily teacher. Did you know that in 2nd grade, the only instruction students receive are for phonics and phonemic awareness is during small group instruction? What that means is if you weren't one of those 9 to 12 lowest students in class, you were receiving limited phonics and phonemic awareness when we were face-to-face. Did you know that during virtual instruction, teachers are able to see every kid every day because they don't have a limitation of 2 to 3 kids per group? They can have more than 3 students per group and see more students. Did you know that phonemic awareness is extremely difficult, if not impossible, at times face-to-face due to wearing masks? Did you know that in some schools and inclusion classes, they had just as many students as the regular ed or gifted classes in some cases because there wasn't enough space in other classrooms? While there are many benefits to being back in the classroom in a normal year, it will not be the same instruction happening. It is not a normal year. We are limited in so many ways, and while virtual learning has many limitations, it also has many benefits for teachers and students. Please keep this in mind while making the important decision to keep us safe, while also considering the limitations of face-to-face instruction. Sincerely, a concerned parent and teacher. I would also like to make a remark based on my own experiences as someone with mental health issues. In junior year, I had a mental health crisis and I ended up trying to kill myself. I ended up in the hospital for about 3 days and then went to a Kempsville Behavioral Center
30 seconds.
for a week. As this person points out, many of the reasons the data is considering that the people are considering for going back to school has been skewed by extenuating factors. Not all children and teachers follow mitigation practices equally. You have teenagers, you have children that do not want to put on their masks, that do not wear it right, that take it off to drink and talk. So it's unrealistic to expect that they would follow it perfectly. I would also like to point out that it is extremely frustrating to me to
And
see
that is
mental health
time.
be weaponized as a reason to go back to school. If you are
And
concerned
that
for
is
your child's
time.
mental
Please
health, you
follow
need to send
up.
them to a therapist.
Please follow
Go back
up
to
with the
school.
remaining comments via email. Thank you.
Speaker number 36 asked to be removed, so we're moving on to number 37. Caitlin Jensen, please unmute.
Welcome.
Good evening. My name is Caitlin Jensen. I want to begin by thanking Dr. Lindsay for intervening to delay the return to face-to-face instruction as COVID numbers soar. Tonight, I return to speak in front of this board as a former employee. After 14 years as a teacher, I left the division on October 2nd and was encouraged by many people I know to speak tonight to share my story. My decision to leave the division was a result of Dr. Spence's and this board's handling of the initial return to school plan. The summer months were especially hard for me as I dealt with anxiety and other mental health issues for the first time in my life as a result of the return to school plan that was proposed. I couldn't get past the disregard for staff and student safety, the manipulation of data, and the flat out lies being told by people in this administration that I once had respect for. It was a series of emails that I exchanged with Dr. Spence in early August following my speech to the school board that put the nail in the coffin for my departure from this division. So I suppose I should thank you for making it easier to say goodbye to the division that I had been a part of as a student or employee for almost 30 years. I am happy to report that I love my new job. I am healthy and have found a work-family balance that I didn't know was possible. Although I work for a global company, they truly value work-life balance and care about my health and safety, neither of which describes VBCPS at this point in time. What I really want the school board to know is when I have shared my story, it results in lots of people I do not know who happen to be employed by VBCPS reaching out to me to find out how I got out and what type of job I am doing. I gladly share more details with them and encourage them that they can be brave enough to leave this abusive relationship and that life is better on the other side. The exodus of teachers from this division has only just begun. And if this board votes in favor of returning before staff have the option of being fully vaccinated and the percent positivity is trending dramatically down, I feel confident saying you will only see the job vacancies grow. To me, it would be far more embarrassing to the division to have to return to virtual due to having lost so many staff members than because you opted to err on the side of safety. The loss of staff has been exponential this year. The elementary school I worked at had 4 teachers leave in the final 2 weeks before Labor Day, and I was the 5th teacher to leave. Never have I seen so many teachers leave a school at the beginning of a new school year. What is the board doing to address this loss of staff? It certainly isn't asking them the one question that every staff member would like you to ask them. Do you feel comfortable returning to face-to-face instruction under the proposed plan given the current COVID metrics? I worked in VB long enough to know that school leadership never puts out a survey that won't get exactly the response they want to get. So a lack of resurveying staff and parents says everything we need to know about what the response would be. Back in July, Dr. Spence said that if the board altered his plan in any way, we would need to resurvey all parents and staff. Yet when he decides to throw the plan out altogether, there's no need to survey the staff or parents. As a parent of a kindergartner, I am gravely concerned for what his future schooling experience will be as a result of the mass exodus of teachers from the profession. Will he be blessed to have the same experiences of truly innovative, inspiring, and caring teachers that I had the pleasure of being taught by throughout my student career in VB? Or will he be forced to sit in overcrowded classes taught by teachers who feel trapped, underappreciated, and overworked?
30 seconds.
The power is in your hands to make sure this board retains the power to make sure that community voices continue to be heard and we continue to follow a plan based on health metrics and do not unnecessarily rush back to face-to-face instruction before it is actually safe to do so. Educators are drawing a line, and I support them as a former employee, a spouse of a current employee, and a parent of a kindergartner. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Erin Ferguson. Please unmute.
Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, school board members and Dr. Spence. I want to thank you guys for giving me the opportunity to speak tonight. I planned a slightly different speech to give upon hearing the new plan last week that suggested we pivot away from using the metrics to help us determine when it was safe for face-to-face instruction to resume. However, upon receiving the recent email, I feel relieved that the decision to push back the return of pre-K through 6 students until at least February has been decided. I'm also thankful that the science continues to aid in making this incredibly important decision. I still feel strongly that using the metrics helps us determine when it is safe to return in person. I understand the reason we are attempting to transition from using the metrics to allowing individual schools to make the call is due to the data that showed our students are less likely to contract and spread COVID, and that our schools are not a contributor to community spread. This is where questions start to formulate in my mind. How can our schools not be a part of or at risk of spreading the virus when our students or families are a part of the community? When we returned to school the first time, our metrics indicated it was safe, and that is where we have collected the data that shows our mitigations were working reasonably well. However, we don't have enough data that I'm aware of that shows we can expect the same results when our cases per day and test positivity numbers are at an all-time high. Currently on the CDC website, it states that we are seeing an upward trend of children getting as well as spreading the COVID virus. I spent a good amount of time looking over the CDC's highly recommended metrics that help schools decide when it is safe to return to in-person instruction, as well as the mitigation lists. Their metrics show that when we are at 200 or more cases per 100,000 over a 14 period, we are in the category of high risk of transmission schools. Even in their chart posted on their website shows our current test positivity rate causes us to fall within that category. Data shared from the previous school board meeting said it showed our mitigations were working and that our schools were not contributing to community spread. But here again, our data is limited to our current situation with our numbers being so high. This is where using the metrics continues to be a vital part in helping make the decision when it is safe for us to turn. Other states that have used or switched to a school-by-school basis have not had a lot of success from what I've read. Many of those have had to shut down due to lack of staff that have had to quarantine, which later resulted in the whole division shifting again back to virtual. It was mentioned in tonight's meeting that being able to contact trace is so important as a mitigation that we have decided to postpone. I completely agree with that decision, but I'm still unclear on what the protocol is when students come to school with COVID and how contact tracing is handled. For example, if a parent reports to the school that their child is tested positive or come into contact with someone who did, will the whole class need a quarantine along with any teachers within the room? I worry that when we limit to only notifying and requiring quote unquote close contacts to that student to quarantine is dangerous, especially when they spend hours within the same classroom as well as attend PE where they often have mixed classes. Another important consideration that has been mentioned in previous meetings is mental health. Mental health is extremely important, and I know so many are struggling at this time. But we add to the stress when we do not consistently stick to a plan. We as teachers know that consistency and understanding expectations help students feel safe and help them grow and learn. The same is needed for faculty and staff within the school. I personally struggled this week and know that our students are struggling as well. I had one student confidently tell me that we will be back in person on the 19th, and I had to tell her that wasn't 100% decided. I know she will be disappointed that the date has been pushed back, and that could have been avoided if we stuck to our plan from this summer and used the metrics. The metrics provided families and staff a
30
better
seconds.
understanding of when to expect to come back. With the vaccine rolling out and the governor indicating that teachers and staff are on the list to get vaccinated soon, as well as more people within our community, I personally feel that we should wait until our metrics show that the community spread is lower, as well as our cases per day. I want to end with just a few other questions I hope can be answered. How do we address smaller classrooms that don't meet mitigations for students to be 6 feet apart? With this new reopening plan, will you consider giving families and staff the option to switch if they
And
do
that
not
is
feel
time.
safe? And then, did you say time?
Thank you. Yes, you can feel free to
Thank
follow
you.
up with any remaining remarks. Okay.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Leslie Frailing. Please unmute.
My name is Leslie Frailing, and I'm speaking to you this evening from several perspectives. I am the mother of 2 Virginia Beach school staff members and the grandmother of 4 students in elementary, middle, and high schools. I am a citizen who votes and serves regularly as an election official. I'm a concerned community member who has observed many of these school board meetings. And before retiring, I was a registered nurse for 44 years, working in hospitals, home care, administration, and education. My most recent and last position was in Virginia Beach schools as a substitute school nurse. Presently, I am a volunteer with the Virginia Beach Department of Health Medical Response Team, helping with COVID testing and now with vaccine clinics, as I did earlier today at the Convention Center. Through all of these lenses, I have watched with growing concern the discussions and decisions being made at Virginia Beach Public Schools regarding the return of students to learning in the classrooms. I am worried about my children and my grandchildren going back into schools with COVID uncontrolled in our community. I am concerned about the impact of heightened risk of further community spread if students and staff return where there is no evidence of a downward virus trend. As previously explained, there is a probable correlation between schools and community, with a return accelerating the strain on our community and vice versa. We should and must listen to the public health experts. I am concerned that there is not adequate contact tracing capacity, which will take time to develop. Virginia Beach schools should cancel sports so that athletic trainers can concentrate exclusively on contact tracing. That is more important for an eventual return to face-to-face. I am concerned that school administration does not appear to want or value input from their staff. Why is there no way for them to share outside the chain of command if my grandchildren are in an unsafe situation? How many people are you relying on within the school administration to assure you as to the effectiveness of the mitigation or how the cases are presenting? I am concerned that our children will lose teachers, bus drivers, nurses, and other staff, resulting in gaps and additional burdens on already stressed employees. And most importantly, the danger of actual loss of life or the possibility of lifelong disability to them, as well as to our families, if this virus continues to spiral out of control. I am concerned that we do not know enough about the long-term impacts of even a mild case of this virus on our children. There should be 4 weeks between the introduction of a next level when students do return, which should not happen until and that decision should be made collaboratively with the superintendent and the school board. We must wait just a little longer for vaccines to be available and staff to be immunized. This is a pandemic, but it will end if we do the right thing eventually. As a volunteer with the vaccine clinic, I received my first dose vaccine series.
30
and
seconds.
eager to get the second. After the second, I know that I will have nearly complete protection against the virus. Why can we not wait for the teachers and staff to have this as well, so that we can have a significantly increased level of mitigation when we have this many people gathering together? Educators are drawing the line, and I am a nurse, citizen, parent, and grandparent standing with them. Thank you.
Thank you. Before we call the next speaker, I want to make an announcement for the remaining Zoom speakers that after speaker 40, we'll be taking a 10-minute break. We're halfway through our Zoom list. So with that, Madam Clerk.
Our next speaker is Suzanne Saltesiak. Please unmute.
Hi, I'm Suzanne Saltesiak. You all know me, but today I am reading a letter from Stephanie Crow, a nurse who is right now working, so she could not share her voice, and so I will with her for her. I am both a parent of 2 children in VBCPS and a nurse, and as both, I am appalled that disregarding the metric and sending children back to school is even a topic that's being discussed. I'm having my statement read by someone else due to having to work during the board meeting. First, I would like to address the debate from the perspective of a parent. School never stopped. Our kids have been provided with the education that they are entitled to, and teachers are working harder than ever to adapt to a new platform of teaching while also making every effort to meet the educational needs of their students. Is it hard on parents, especially working parents? Absolutely. However, we need to realize that rectifying our inconvenience cannot come at the expense of others' lives. Before the assumption is made that I have this easy, I have one gifted child and one 2E or twice exceptional child. I'm in college and I work full time. Balancing everything remains unbelievably overwhelming, and my son with ADHD has absolutely struggled to adjust to virtual learning. As a society, we do not wish to acknowledge that education is a team effort between home and school. Our children's education was never intended to be the sole responsibility of the teacher. The one caveat, which I believe holds validity, is that of our SPED population. However, why is homebound education not being utilized? Homebound can not only help fill the gap for special needs students who are not able to thrive in a virtual setting, but it can provide mitigation control for teachers, TAs, students, and their families. If homebound isn't safe, please explain why it's safe to place these students in a classroom with multiple other students, teachers, and staff, especially if they also fall into a group that's medically unable to wear masks. The mayor's update on Saturday showed for Virginia Beach alone had a 21.4 positivity rate, 10 cases, 55 hospitalization, 15 deaths, and 55% of total cases within the 20 to 49 age bracket just last week. In August, it was determined that anything over 10% positivity was unsafe, but we are double that. Studies have shown that not only can children be vectors in the infection chain, but the children's ages 10 and older spread COVID the same rate as adults. We say we are following the science, but what science are we following exactly? It's been proven that we need a minimum of 6 feet of social distancing, yet the schools are ensuring 3 feet if feasible. We have doctors that advise the district that COVID spread risk among children is negligible. However, if that's the case, where are these same doctors and CHKD as a whole banning all siblings from appointments? Just to clarify, 2+ children in a doctor's office is unsafe. However, a school full of children is fine. And lastly, science relies on evidence. So let us look at the evidence. So let us look at what we have seen in Hampton Roads alone. Not only did cases skyrocket once schools reopened, but Chesapeake Public Schools have remained open despite the metric. As of December, they had 7 outbreaks, over 1,000 quarantine groups, 1 teacher dead. Chesapeake's general is at 91% capacity with only 2 open ICU beds due to their surge in cases. They currently have more COVID patients than any other hospital in Hampton Roads. You cannot even properly analyze this statistical comparison without acknowledging that CPS enrolls approximately 39,000 children while we have 67,000. Lastly, in the name of science, I would like to speak to you as a nurse. We focus so much on numbers of deaths and how many people survive to prove that risk is not as high as the current perception. There's no predicting how anyone will respond to COVID. We have seen elder adults with multiple risk factors come through
30
fine
seconds.
and healthy young people die. And have you ever analyzed the difference between surviving and living? We have patients that live, yet now they have a trach feeding tube, depend on a ventilator to breathe for them, or will require dialysis for the rest of their lives, because not only did this virus destroy their lungs, but it destroyed their kidneys. What about the ones whose hearts were damaged and now suffer heart failure, or the ones that coded so many times that they are technically alive, but will never recover from the catastrophic brain injury suffered due to lack of oxygen? They are some of the lucky survivors.
And that is time.
Thank you.
Thank you. So we will temporarily pause at 10:20 and reconvene at 10:30. Welcome again, public. The speaker portion of our meeting and turning it over to Madam Clerk to announce our next speaker.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The next speaker is Andy Ban. Please unmute.
Welcome.
Good evening, Chair. Good evening, Chair Rye and school board members. I am grateful for that break too.
Oh,
so thank you.
We were going to thank you for your patience. Okay.
Thank you for all you're doing. This is quite a burden, and I'm grateful for it to you for carrying it. I'm taking advantage of this opportunity to reinforce the email that I sent yesterday asking you to consider our students' competitiveness in the world as a factor in making the decision to reopen. Regarding the superintendent's suggestion that he make these decisions going forward, I object to that. You are all elected and therefore closest to the people, and therefore the decision to reopen should be made by you who are most responsive to the voters, I think. The health of students, I think, should be reserved to parents as a factor in your decision. I suggest that you allow parents to make that choice at multiple points in the year, and we heard from a parent who didn't want to send her kid to school, and I know you will allow that. So now, good news, data, and it's really just an article that I found from just last week. In Chicago, a public health department leader announced they published a medical study that showed low levels of coronavirus transmission in local non-public schools. An official said, "I hope this publication helps physicians and the city's schools have increased confidence that an option to return to school is the right thing to do. This data adds to the growing suggestion that an option for in-person learning is a safe thing to do." I bring this data to you not to scold teachers, but to reassure them. I appreciate that they are concerned and even scared. So I respect them, and it's in that frame of reference that I bring this data that's good news. Chicago studied the spread of COVID-19 in local schools that have opened, and city public health officials concluded in-school coronavirus transmission levels are lower than that of the general community. This paper was published in the Journal of Public Health and Management Practice. In studying students mostly enrolled in local Catholic schools, the health department found coronavirus mitigation strategies, and this is why: masks, social distancing, and hand hygiene kept classroom virus spread at lower levels than in the rest of the community. In the period that they studied, there were 59 cases of COVID-19 among 31 schools. Of the cases, 20 were among the 2,750 staff members, and 39 were among the 19,500 students. The department tracked cases across 91 schools, and the highest number of cases in one school was 8. and in a group of cases, non-adherence to physical distancing outside of class time contributed to those. So this is, and here's another point from the study that I have neglected. We all have to acknowledge that walking out the door right now, looking, I guess, to where I would be standing to my back, walking out that door is not a zero risk proposition in a pandemic. So what are we comparing it to? There's reality outside too. The option, they conclude therefore, the option for public education is the right thing for children and families right now. This
30
data I
seconds.
submit can be used here in Virginia Beach. Catholic schools are open for in-person instruction. If COVID attacks in those schools in Virginia were problematic for students or teachers, is there any doubt that we would have heard about it? I ask you to reopen schools for in-person instruction. If you decide not to, or in some other limited way, I ask that special education students be included in whatever group attends in person. I've only read about pre-K to 6, and so I ask that
And that is
special
time.
ed be mentioned particularly. Thank you very much, and I'm grateful for your time and patience
Thank you.
with everybody here. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Sarah Clark. Please unmute.
Welcome.
Thank you. As citizens who serve the children and represent the Virginia Beach community, the members of this school board face complex and demanding challenges. In a normal year, you all devote time and effort to keeping up to date on the latest trends in educational leadership, becoming deeply involved in community activities, and spending countless hours in schools and at extracurricular activities. Your love of learning and concern for students, staff, and the community at large is part of what makes this such an amazing division to belong to. We can all agree that this past year has added a burden that none of you have signed up for. Yet here you are, showing up for the community despite feeling the weight of the world on each decision you make. You are being pulled in all directions, and you know that whatever decision you make will have an adverse impact on someone in the community that you love. The community you serve recognizes the unique challenges you have faced this year. We recognize the sleepless nights you have spent trying to become as informed as possible on the risks of this virus. You have listened to the school administration. You have done independent research. You have talked to the experts in public health. You have spent hours listening to the community share our stories with you. We also recognize that you play a vital role in representing our community. You, this board of 11 public servants, are best equipped group of people to make this decision. You have spent countless hours soliciting input from all of the stakeholders, including school administration, school staff, parents, students, medical professionals, and the local public health expert. I am here tonight as a parent and as a teacher to thank you for your tireless efforts and to ask that you continue to demand a role in determining when it is safe to return to in-person learning. Agreeing to this new plan to delay opening until February 2nd removes you from being able to monitor the concerns from all stakeholders. It puts returning to buildings in the hands of one stakeholder alone, even if community spread is no better or even worse. This is a decision that requires input from all of us, and only the school board can guarantee that all perspectives are considered in that decision. Please do not hand this decision over to one stakeholder alone. Please vote to delay the decision on when to return to buildings until transmission rates are in a steady decline. The community needs you. Educators are drawing the line, and the community is standing with us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Lindsay Nathaniel. Please unmute.
Welcome.
Good evening, school board members and Dr. Spence. I am the mother of a sophomore at Princess Anne High School. While I appreciate having a virtual option, I'm floored at the proposed changes to the plan that disregard the rising metrics. As a community, we all must do our part to stop the spread so that we can get back to normal. My family is not alone in the sacrifices that we have made. So many of us have not seen extended family in a year, canceled vacations, not gone to restaurants. I could go on and on. Following through with the proposed plan is a slap in the face to all of us that have been taking this pandemic seriously. My daughter has been thriving doing virtual learning, and I've been impressed with the creativity her teachers have shown. I applaud the Virginia Beach teachers for their dedication to our children. Unfortunately, it seems like their hard work is continuously getting overlooked this year. Even virtually, my daughter has created a bond with her teachers. I will say that my daughter was concerned when one of her teachers got extremely sick with COVID. She came to me telling me how bad the teacher had sounded and was worried because she had no class for multiple days. Imagine how hard something like this would be for students that already lost loved ones to COVID. Are you prepared for that? Thankfully, her teacher did recover, and it turns out the class was canceled because there was a shortage of substitutes. Keep in mind, this was in November, before the metrics went through the roof. How in the world do you think you will keep up with it now? Or will it just become the norm that classes are regularly canceled? I could go on and on about how amazing the teachers are in Virginia Beach schools, but just like anything else in life, there's always people that do not comply or believe COVID is something to worry about. How is it fair to the teachers and staff that have done their part for almost a year, keeping themselves and the community safe, to be forced back in schools with others that may not be taking it seriously? You cannot be the mask police in every class all the time. I'm sure you've all seen the noses out at the grocery store because people don't wear masks correctly. What makes you think the classroom would be any different? I witnessed a teacher unmasked when students were present. I even saw teachers' social media posts of a large unmasked gathering with the hashtag, "Don't tell Daddy Northam." I have zero faith the safety measures will be followed by some of these teachers and students, and I fear for the other teachers and students that you will be putting at risk with your plan. We are on the cusp of the teachers getting a vaccine. Why rush this? I understand some doctors may have said that it's safe to return. Some even signed a letter that one of the board members shared on social media. Some of these very same doctors work at CHKD practices around the area. Interesting thing is that I just had to have my husband request time off of work so that he could stay home with our youngest, so I could take my 16-year-old to a routine appointment because the policy is that only one child and one parent can attend appointments. Doesn't matter if it's a sick appointment or a routine appointment with the allergist, because it's their policy put in place to keep everyone safe. So why are we even having this conversation? Some people may be swayed with names on a paper, but events that happened last week at the Capitol have shown the world that even people in positions of power can have bad judgment. Doctors, off-duty police officers, and elected officials took part in violent riots, most with no masks on. So excuse me if I'm not impressed with a few doctors' names that support your proposed plan. I got the email today, like everyone else, from Dr. Spence saying that he will be asking for the board for the authority instead of coming back for a vote. And I'll repeat, even people in positions of power can show bad judgment. There is already discrepancies with the proposed plan and what Dr. Lindsay recommends. The community elected
30
board members
seconds.
to represent us. One person should not be making decisions that will impact the entire community with no input. Parents may have a choice to keep kids virtual, but our amazing teachers of Virginia Beach Public Schools do not. Your reckless plan is forcing teachers to risk their lives and is putting the entire community at risk. Educators are drawing the line, and I stand with them. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Jeremy Domlezik. Please unmute.
Welcome.
Thank you. So I've got 3 kids in public school, and I wanted to address today some of the themes that I'm hearing for those who are against face-to-face learning. I support a return to face-to-face learning. First of all, people keep talking about the data and how it's, the report isn't sufficient or the data is not sufficient. Well, why don't we take a look around at what's happening in the schools around us? All right, private schools have been back face-to-face this entire time. They haven't had any problems. There haven't been widespread spreading of COVID. There haven't been teacher deaths. We would have heard about it. Chesapeake schools have been back this entire time. They've been fine. All right, they took a short break after Christmas to let it play out for a couple of weeks, but they're going back. All right, there hasn't been any issues. We can do the same. Secondly, there's been a lot of people talking about let's just delay until the teachers can get a vaccine. Well, there's a couple of issues with that. Number one, how many teachers are actually going to get the vaccine? Because let me tell you, I've heard from a lot of teachers that don't trust it. So then they're going to say the vaccine's not safe, going back to school isn't safe, and therefore we have to stay virtual, or the ones who do get the vaccine. All right, it's not going to be like all of a sudden all our teachers in Virginia Beach have this thing the first week of February. It's going to take a while for those who want to get it. And this is a 2-shot vaccine. The second shot doesn't come 3 to 4 weeks after the first one. So what's going to happen? They're going to say, well, we got to wait till everybody gets the vaccine, till everybody gets both shots. All right. And then it's going to be, well, spring break's coming. People are going to travel. We can't go back right after spring break. Next thing you know, it's going to be the summer and none of the kids went back to school. Finally, and the most important part that I can make tonight is that a lot of people have said that the kids are still getting an education, right? That the teachers are still teaching, which they are, but the kids are still getting an education. Some kids have even come on and said how well they're doing. Well, let me tell you, my youngest son is a special needs kid. He's in the special needs pre-K program, and his education stopped when in-person learning stopped. His teacher is fantastic. She tries her best, all right, but he can't learn virtually. He gets 2 15-minute sessions per day virtually with his teacher. That's it. And even those are a challenge for him. If he goes back to school, he's there for 3+ hours with his teacher. And there's only 4 kids in his class. So he's getting all the attention, all the one-on-one time that he needs to thrive. And his teacher would tell you that he does so much better on the same activities that he does online as he does in person, so much better in person. So I'm hoping one of you courageous board members can propose to send the special ed kids back regardless of what you do with everybody else. Send them back on the 19th. It's a small group. It won't strain your tracing or anything like that. Thank you very much, and I appreciate your consideration for sending our kids back face to face.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Abigail Coburn. Please unmute.
Welcome.
Good evening, and thank you for allowing me the opportunity to speak on the decision to return all VBCPS students to face-to-face learning. My name is Abigail Colburn, and I am currently a senior in the Entrepreneurship and Business Academy at Kempsville High School. To begin, I would like to point out that I can understand why you, as the school board, feel that returning students to face-to-face instruction is the best choice for the education and well-being of my friends and peers. However, before you make this decision, allow me to offer you some insight on the situation from the perspective of a student that this decision will directly affect. As a senior in high school, I'll admit, I want to be able to experience all of the things that senior year has to offer. But the COVID-19 pandemic has placed restrictions on what I can and cannot experience. I live in a home where 5 of 7 people are considered high risk, including myself and my brother Grayson, who is a 6th grader at Corporate Landing Middle School. Every time I leave my house, the fear of contracting and spreading COVID is always gnawing at me in the back of my mind. And if this school board makes the decision to send students back to face-to-face instruction, that gnawing will only become more intense. I understand the school board uses numbers and statistics to guide these kinds of decisions, so I'm going to share some with you. Current local statistics show that in a group of 25 people, there's a 52% chance that someone in the group has COVID. There's a 77% chance that someone in a group of 50 has COVID, and a 92% chance in a group of 100. When the number reaches 500, which most of our school buildings have a population significantly more than, there is a 99% chance that someone will have COVID. Based on this, it's essentially guaranteed that every single school building will have at least 1 case a day if you decide to send students back into the buildings. And to be 100% honest, that's terrifying to me. As a person with a history of mental health issues, including suicidal ideation, an attempted suicide, and a diagnosis of bipolar disorder type 2, I want to specifically address your attempted use of increased suicide rates as justification for sending students back into classrooms. I am extremely disappointed, frustrated, and saddened that you, as members of the local community, would even think that using an increase in local adolescent suicides is remotely okay. As someone who used to self-harm and has attempted to take her own life, I can almost guarantee that these teenagers were already struggling with their mental health well before we started doing school on our computers from home. I can tell you that the increase in the number of local teens who, at their own hands, have lost their lives is more public and more well known than in a normal year because the parents of these teenagers are spending significantly more time with their children, and more parents are noticing that their child is struggling because of the increased time together. CHKD, our own local children's hospital, built a wing dedicated to the mental health of children and adolescents well before COVID was a part of our vocabulary. That being said, please believe me when I tell you sending students back face-to-face learning will almost definitely do more harm than good. As a student that will be directly
30
affected by this
seconds.
decision, I am begging you to delay the vote on sending students back into the school buildings. I stand with the teachers, and I will continue to stand with them until the right decision is made. Thank you.
Thank you.
Speaker number 46 asked to be removed. We're going on to number 47. Tammy Waters, please unmute.
Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening. I'm speaking tonight on behalf of all of the teachers and staff who are feeling demoralized, expendable, and hopeless. And why shouldn't we feel this way? We are in the middle of a raging pandemic, and our leaders are presenting a plan that does not follow any sort of metrics, even when our city is at a critical risk for COVID transmission. Teachers are scared. We are the ones on the front line. At last week's workshop, one of the presenters made the statement, if teachers can go to Lowe's, they can be in school teaching their students. To that, I say, when is the last time you spent 8 hours in a Lowe's? Walking into Lowe's to buy a can of paint is not equivalent to sitting in a classroom with up to 20 students sitting 3 feet apart for hours at a time. Some in classrooms with poor ventilation and windows that cannot be opened. Did you notice I said 3 feet apart? CDC guidelines say you should stay 6 feet apart, yet you have decided that 3 feet is good enough. Schools are petri dishes of infections in the best of times. During a global pandemic, they are downright hazardous. I chose to be option 1 because I was led to believe that if I chose option 2, I may be separated from the school that I have taught in for 22 years. I was comforted by the assurance that the guidelines that were presented to us in the fall would be followed. At this point, I have lost faith in our school leadership's ability to keep us safe. We aren't talking about a temporary spike here. We are at 21% positivity rate for our area, and it's rising daily. I am relieved that Dr. Spence has pushed back the reopening date by 2 weeks, but it's not enough. As Dr. Lindsay stated earlier today, schools need to stay virtual until there is a significant decline in community transmission and until teachers who wish to receive the vaccine have had the opportunity to get both doses. I also strongly disagree with Dr. Spence's proposal that he be given the freedom to make decisions without approval or a vote from the school board. We elected the school board members to be our voice and our representatives. No decision should be made without input from the school board and the public. If you send us back to school with the conditions as they are now, you may as well be signing a death warrant. People will get sick. People will die. I love my students, I love my administration, and I love my coworkers. They may be expendable to you, but I couldn't bear to lose a single one. How are you going to feel when teachers start dying? How are students going to feel when their teachers start dying? Those are the questions you need to be thinking about tonight. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Tony Drew. Please unmute.
Welcome.
Good evening, board members and Dr. Spence. My name is Tony Drew. I've been a resident of Virginia Beach for 45 years. I'm speaking tonight to express my concerns over the proposal to return to face-to-face instruction in Virginia Beach City Schools. This is based upon science in the fact that during the week of 4 to 9 January, the city of Virginia Beach broke records with 503 new cases of the virus. And more so, the COVID dashboard operated by the City of Virginia Beach school system has shown a steady increase in cases starting in September through December, running from 12 cases in September, 38 cases in October, 65 cases in November, and 90 cases in December. So anyone can clearly see this is an upward trend, both for the school system and for the city. While I am not a professional educator myself, I live in a home where I do have 2 employees of the City of Virginia Beach. My son has been with the system for 22 years and he's still an active member. And my wife taught with special education classes for 15 years and she has since retired. So I gather a lot of input from the 2 of them on what they see on a day-to-day basis in our school system. I've also reached out to teachers employed by the school system, and they have provided me with specific issues that they are concerned about. One is the stress level on students in a schoolroom environment, mask and social distance from other students being worse than receiving instruction from home. The best example of having virtual instruction vice mask face-to-face instruction came from a teacher who said, teaching young masked students how to read without the student or the teacher being able to see their lips move greatly reduced the student's ability to learn. And that should be underlined, greatly reduced the student's ability to learn, which is a primary function of going to school. Another concern was elementary school students remaining in the same room for an entire day, and the ventilation in the rooms are questionable at best, and in most cases do not have windows that open. In situations where teachers are splitting their time between in-person students and those who are learning virtual, this proved to be a distraction from each group of students. It needs to be one or the other, and the best case is it should be virtual training. And this is one of the more disturbing things that I heard. There are situations where students and teachers are coming to school sick, and there is no point of entry body temperature check being made by school administration before teachers, staff, and students enter the building. This honor system of a teacher or staff member or the parent of a child saying, I am not sick, puts everyone in the building at risk.
30
there
seconds.
Needs to be a point of entry test given. I'd like to close to take a moment to remember Miss Dorothy Ann Myers, an employee of the City of Virginia Beach school system for over 30 years. Miss Myers died from complications of COVID-19 virus on 21 December 2020. I am vehemently opposed to Dr. Spence having the sole authority on this matter. You as the school board members are our elected representative.
And that is time.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Peter Alaya. Please unmute.
Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for letting me speak tonight. My first point is to bring up how saddened and shocked I am at the misuse of a late child's memory. To use this tragic loss as a point to help push your short-sighted and dangerous agenda is appalling, pathetic, and a disgrace to their memory. How can you continue to take advantage of a grieving family's tribulation while sidestepping and completely disregarding the countless number of children who have suffered and died in silence? It's despicable, and you should be ashamed of yourself if you do it. Mental health, as many others have said tonight, is not new or unique to COVID, and I do not deny that it has risen due to this virus. So let's take that specific opportunity to expand our healthcare system in schools and take care of those countless faceless children who some would use as a shoehorn with which to force their children and the children of many others into a school that will surely send them home with the virus that has killed many people close to my family. I'm sorry. My second point is about my classes. As you may know, I teach tech ed at PAMS, and absolutely love my job. There's nothing better than teaching my kids how to use a new tool or create a new project in my shop. I love being in there with them just as much, if not more, than they do. However, with community numbers right now, I know, not think, but know that the idea of keeping them out of keeping the virus out of the school is impossible. Why? Because we know from those numbers that people are still not taking this virus seriously. How can we allow others to put our kids and family members in danger due to their negligence and inconsideration for their community? And I understand that virtual doesn't work for all, but it happens to work for some of them. And it works really well for many of them. I know that with the tools that the division has given us, I have been able myself to teach my students more about computer-assisted design and 3D modeling in a way that is more accessible to them. Not only has securely allowed me the opportunity to monitor their work closely, but it also has allowed them to communicate with me in a way that doesn't embarrass them in front of the class. The use of the meeting rooms in Google Meetings and Google Meet has allowed them to work together and socialize without me constantly breathing down their necks or looking at what they're doing while they're just trying to work independently. While kids who may need one-on-one can jump back in the main chat and either watch my screen in real time or share theirs and allow me to walk them through it. It's really been cool for them to show me their grit and determination to get it done correctly. Again, this isn't for all, but it's working for some and teaching our kids to become more independent. When we get back face-to-face, it will have them champing at the bit to do more and use those virtual skills to help them with the physical challenges. So for those parents and community members who think we're pushing to stay home, working in our PJs, I assure you that's not what it's about. I had a quick conversation with my wife during one of the breaks, and she mentioned that if we're doing so poorly at our jobs, why do they want us back so badly? She makes a great point, even though it hurts. If we can't do our job, what's the hurry to get back to being in the classroom? It's because you know in your hearts that we are great at what we do. So stop questioning our work ethic. We've been doing this for many years without any luxuries of doing it from home, and we will continue to do that with the virus under control. We cannot wait to get back into the class. We cannot wait to be with our children again. We just have to wait until we can do it safely. And again, educators are drawing the line, and I stand with them. I sincerely hope you do the same. Thank you so much for giving me this time. Have a great night.
Thank you.
Speaker number 50 is not online. We will go to speaker number 51, Shauna O'Galvin. Please unmute.
Welcome.
Hi. Hello. My name is Chono Galvin, and I am a parent of 2 kids that attend BBCPS. I'm speaking tonight to stand with and support our educators who have been put through the ringer, from being hailed as heroes at the beginning of the pandemic to now being abused, dehumanized, and vilified for wanting to preserve their physical and mental health and keep their families safe during a deadly global pandemic. I feel as if leadership is forgetting that last part. We are in a global pandemic in which citizens in our very community are getting sick and dying. Our community's atrociously high % positive goes to show that people are not wearing masks and not avoiding social gatherings. And somehow, bringing students back to school during the height of the holiday spike is being discussed, mainly because there is a, quote, loss of learning going on. As a reminder, you're basing data against normal learning metrics in the most abnormal moment in time. These students are dealing with real world problems, parents losing their jobs, families going hungry, dealing with illness or death, and they're watching our country going through massive civil unrest, all the while surviving a global pandemic. It may appear that students are not excelling in predetermined metrics and testing standards, but after sitting in class with my kids, they're learning how to navigate digital tools like Zoom and Google Suite better than my professional work colleagues know how to. If you're worried about how kids will survive in the work world, I assure you they are probably about 80% there. Our students are redesigning what the future looks like, and we should be building and improving their virtual learning environment to best fit them, instead of forcing it to look like a typical 7-hour school day. People keep bashing virtual learning, and granted, it's not ideal the way it currently is. If leadership spent the same energy trying to get kids back into buildings and applying it to improving their safe virtual learning environment, students and teachers would be faring better. I am extremely fortunate to have a job that's flexible enough to allow me to assist my children during school, but it is exceptionally difficult. I am not a teacher, but my kids' teachers, They are breaking their backs to make this work. They don't have a choice like I do to stop their work and tend to their own kids. They are in an impossible situation. Teaching in person and virtual, one of my kids' teachers has her 5-year-old daughter climbing all over her during class, and she keeps going with the grace and patience of a saint. They are working 24/7, being creative and innovative, adaptive and accessible as best they can, all the while being whipped back and forth between anxiety-inducing decisions and plans being made by their bosses in which they have no say, all dealing with their own home lives during a global pandemic. Educators are drawing the line, and as a parent, citizen, and voter, I stand with them. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Connor Epley. Please unmute.
Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, members of the school board. My name is Connor Epley, and I'm addressing you tonight to urge you to oppose the plan that Dr. Spence and his administration have proposed to the school board. To get straight to the point, it is not safe for students and staff to return face-to-face at this time. And as much as I would like to talk to you about all the research and science that supports my and many others' view that returning face-to-face is not safe given the current level of community transmission, I am sure that among the many other speakers that you will be hearing from tonight that are advocating for the safety of our community and standing here in solidarity with our teachers and staff, that any point I make will probably have already been said multiple times. So instead, I would like to use my time to talk about the real impact that unsafe proposals to return face-to-face are having on our Virginia Beach City Public School staff, particularly this proposal. One of the biggest reasons why I oppose this plan, second only to safety risk, is because my belief that we are going to worsen our staffing issues both in the short term and long term. Even before this plan was proposed, we had already lost so many amazing teachers and staff due to early retirement and resignations. Many of them were faced with the impossible decision of whether to go back face-to-face when it is unsafe or leaving their job, a job that they love. Now that this plan has been proposed, many teachers and staff are again struggling with this decision. Recently, I found out that one of my former teachers was one of those staff members that had to make this difficult decision. This teacher, like so many other teachers, goes above and beyond for their students. They sponsor numerous clubs and devote seemingly endless hours to their students. They have been recognized for their dedication and as a result, received numerous awards on varying levels. Unfortunately, this outstanding teacher just resigned. I want us to take a second to really understand what that means. This teacher, who clearly loves their job and students and has proven their dedication to our school system, felt the need to resign. The fact that this is not an isolated incident, but rather the case for a significant portion of our staff is unacceptable in every sense of the word. If this plan is approved, there is not a doubt in my mind that we are going to lose even more teachers in the short term and negatively impact our ability to hire teachers in the future because of the reputation that our school division will have. A reputation that the voices of concerned staff members fall on deaf ears, and that the term safety comes first is up for debate. Our educators are drawing the line, and I stand with them in solidarity without hesitation. Teachers had my back all 13 years of my educational journey, and now I want to have theirs. Thank you for your time, and Happy New Year.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Catherine Malley. Please unmute.
Welcome. Welcome.
Good evening, Superintendent Spence, Chairperson Rye, and members of the Virginia Beach School Board. My name is Catherine Malley, and I am a 20-year educator in Virginia Beach and a board member of the Virginia Beach Education Association. I am currently teaching pre-K at Arrowhead Elementary. Tonight, I am going to talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly. My pre-K students are thriving in the virtual environment. That's the good. Recently, I have been testing them in PALS and math. I am amazed at the progress many have made. I attribute their success to parent support, a safe and consistent learning environment, and their natural joy for learning. Next, the bad and the ugly. This coronavirus is bad and ugly, and it is not going away. It has disrupted our educational system and the way we have always done things. I appreciate the superintendent's recent recommendation of a later return to face-to-face instruction due to health metrics. However, it is not safe for face-to-face instruction at this time. It will not be safe until the number of infections go down and a vaccine is being actively given to educational staff. The following is a recent quote from a Virginia Beach ER nurse. I do not know of a single ER in our region that is not overflowing and overburdened. This does not happen when there are beds available in the hospital. My own 42-bed ER has been holding around 20 admitted patients most days, some of which have waited for over 24 hours for their bed. Since the Monday after Thanksgiving, we have routinely had 60 to over 80 patients in our ER. Halls are full, the waiting room is full, and our disaster hall, which we only open for disasters, is full. My last shift, there were 23 admissions and 30 patients in the waiting room when I left. This number ebbs and flows with patient movement in the hospital, but we are largely overburdened and stretched thin. This new strain of COVID should make leadership even more cautious. I understand that we cannot let fear rule our lives, but we must respect the lives of staff and students. We are endangering staff and students by enabling face-to-face instruction during the height of a pandemic. There is a substantial risk to exposing humans to this virus, and there will be consequences of illness and death. Not one more life should be lost. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Crystal Massenberg. Please unmute.
Welcome.
Welcome. Good evening, members of the school board and Dr. Spence. I am speaking on behalf of myself and several of my colleagues. After all of the discussions and emails that have been sent and stated, there has never been any mention of how the face-to-face return affects teachers and staff and their concerns about returning from Dr. Spence in his plans. It's always about the students. Well, without the teachers, how will the students and staff, without the teachers and staff, how will students learn? Teachers had to make a decision to teach virtual or face-to-face in August, which was 5 months ago. Since then, many teachers and staff have had children or now have significant health problems that may keep them from returning face-to-face. But once again, we haven't been given that option to change if needed. How is that being fair to your staff who teach these students? Teachers are having such anxiety and panic attacks, sleep disruptions, since hearing that we have to now come back to school face-to-face in the height of the pandemic. Some of my colleagues have stated that they're ready to quit because they just can't handle it. Again, I ask, how is this fair? Perhaps if we had to make that option, we wouldn't be losing more teachers. Dr. Spence had made a suggestion that if the parents of these students wanted them to make a change to go virtual, that they needed to call the principal. There's no room in these other virtual classrooms. Again, many of us are very nervous about going back face to face, If we had that option, there may be more room for these students. I know that I do not speak for all teachers, but most of us have stepped up to the plate and learned how to teach in a virtual world the best that we can and adapt, just like we have been asked to do in a face-to-face environment several times. We would all agree it's not the best for teaching, but what we do know is that it's keeping us safe. In the last email that was sent by Dr. Spence, he talked about the ghostly students that teachers get very frustrated about. Those are attendance problems that was set by the district. Even the younger students know how to get away with it. They just set their computer on and just walk away. They know what they're doing. That's a frustration for all teachers. Perhaps that attendance issue could be changed. COVID pay that was sent out, the notice about COVID pay. How could we prove that we got it at work? How long would it take to get the pay approved? We only get 12 sick days.
30 seconds.
So what if we run out of time? Or what happens if we have to quarantine? Sounds like the virtual learning right now would be the best. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Rebecca Bragg. Please unmute.
Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Spence and Chairwoman and School Board. Tonight obviously is an important night for us all, evidenced by the number of speakers that we've had. I find it amazing that an issue regarding the best interest of our children has become such a divisive one. And I recognize the challenge that you guys must face when weighing all of the data. And when I say data, I mean the actual valid data provided by doctors that you guys have brought forward to listen to. All of the doctors, including the entire panel of doctors, where a majority of them told you that these students belong in school. And then we also had the one that we had to hear again tonight, recommending that apparently we delay this. So it makes me wonder, which doctors do we listen to? One point I would like to think that we all can agree on in this is the best interest of our children. Teachers are critical as part of delivering these critical services to our students, and I don't want to dismiss their contribution and their importance. I want to thank every one of the teachers that my children have had, because my teachers or my students have had amazing, fantastic teachers, despite the challenges that I know that they face every day in trying to deliver this virtual learning to my two children that are both in 9th grade and 10th. I come to you today to remember our mission, though. The Virginia Beach City Public Schools, in partnership with the entire community, will empower every student to become a lifelong learner who is responsible, productive, and an engaged citizen within the global community. Our mission is about our students. It's difficult for me to believe that members of the board are even open to public input sometimes when there's several members who are members of the VBEA, which has been adamant in its position of staying closed and making unreasonable demands. When Ms. Anderson, Ms. Riggs, and Ms. Holtz are being lobbied by that very organization they belong to, how are we to believe they are impartial by being members of this organization? They support the demands of that president, while the VBEA does not represent a majority of the teachers and certainly not our students. We would be disingenuous to dismiss the varied needs of our students to accomplish the very mission you guys have set forth for them. Now, some may thrive in the virtual environment and others obviously are not. I have a house with both. My 10th grader is doing beautifully in virtual learning, but my poor 9th grader, despite the amazing teachers that she has, her special needs in her IB rigorous program is challenging, and she is drowning, and she needs the immediate support from her teachers in a face-to-face environment. It is not
30
productive
seconds.
or engaging for her. I implore you guys, to accomplish this goal, we must acknowledge and recognize we cannot continue on this current trend. I implore you to consider all the valid data and put our students first. 2 final thoughts. One of the largest mental health providers in our area just closed abruptly. And as we face a growing mental health crisis, this closure is only going to compound the issue with our students.
And that is
and
time.
finally, diversity. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Speaker number 56 is not online. We will move to speaker number 57. Gina Lane, please unmute.
Welcome.
Good evening. As a parent and teacher in VBCPS, I'm gravely concerned that there has been discussion about throwing out metrics and returning us all to in-person learning as early as January 19th. I'm grateful and very relieved that the recommendation right now is to postpone the return. As a parent, I very reluctantly chose option 1 for my children. I had to do this because with my teaching position, you can only be option 1. While I didn't necessarily agree with the threshold level for yellow, I was appreciative that there were, in fact, thresholds that would return us to virtual learning if needed. I am not comfortable with sending my children into a school building when our numbers are this high, and I shouldn't have to switch them at this point to option 2 after they have built solid, positive relationships with their teachers over the last several months. VBCPS should honor their commitment they made to our community and continue the use of metrics to determine when it is safe to return to in-person learning. Dr. Lindsay states that there is not much research on transmission in schools when community transmission is high. Dr. Lindsay states that there should be a decline in transmission rates before returning to in-person learning. Dr. Lindsay also references the CDC metrics. She said our numbers should be below substantial and at least stabilized before returning to in-person learning. We should not have any students or staff returning to the buildings when we are in the middle of a surge. We are currently 4 times higher than the yellow threshold for cases and double the positivity rate in the Eastern region. 500 children in Virginia Beach alone in the past 2 weeks have tested positive for COVID. All of this greatly increases everyone's chances of becoming infected when we are in the school building. When we were in the buildings back in the fall, the chances were a lot less that we would be exposed because less people in the community had it. Dr. Lindsay also mentions phases. While I agree with phasing, I don't understand why we are not considering phasing in elementary in smaller chunks. Why are we bringing entire school buildings back at once at the elementary and high school level? We are in the middle of a health crisis, and honestly, even more so than we were in the fall. We are at a very critical point in our community right now. Please do not ignore community transmission rates when determining when to return to in-person learning. Please wait to return all of us to in-person learning until we are past the surge and numbers are declining. Educators are drawing the line, and I stand with them. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Allison Verbanik. Please unmute.
Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening. I usually come before you to speak on behalf of an anonymous staff member, but tonight I am just a parent speaking from the heart. I want to express the relief I felt when I read the email that came out earlier today from Dr. Spence. His decision to change his recommendation to you, the school board, and to delay the return of option 1 students and teachers based on his conversation with his health staff and Dr. Demetra Lindsay from the Virginia Beach Department of Public Health allowed me to take a deep breath once again. However, in the same email, he asked you all to vote to give him unilateral authority in the future to open or close schools as he sees fit. I am asking you to not support Dr. Lindsay's new recommendation to bypass you as our elected school board members in the decision-making for our district going forward. While the new arbitrary return to school date of February 1st is a good start, our return of option 1 should be based on our community transmission levels, which are directly related to school transmission, new research that shows that children are in fact spreaders of this virus, and the concerns for this new variant of COVID-19 that is more easily transmissible and has been identified in our neighboring state of Maryland. For years, the administration has told us to trust our educators, to do what is best for our students, to depend on them, to know what services our children need to learn, grow, and excel in their education, and to rely on them to step between our kids and harm's way. Well, here we are now, during a global pandemic, and we are once again relying on our educators to keep our students safe. Only this time, this administration isn't listening to them tell us to pull back, remain virtual, stop the spread. The administrative's narrative has changed. We are being asked to dismiss their experience in the classroom, disregard their knowledge of how our mitigation strategies are dangerously lacking in a setting that they are intimately knowledgeable of, and deny them what should be their right to remain safe when it is within your power to continue to educate our children virtually. What was the point of a 1-to-1 ratio of Chromebooks if not for scenarios such as this? We are not talking about forever here, folks. We are talking about a moment in time that could change the future of our district should we lose our valuable educators because this administration and school board failed to stand with them and keep them safe. As a VPCPS parent, it is my job to do what is best for my children, both in the here and now and also in the future. If you vote to return option 1 tonight, you may very well be altering our district's ability to provide top-notch educators to our student body. We have seen educators start early retirement and change to new careers because our fall 2020 plan was not robust enough. And we will unfortunately see many more, if not a mass exodus, if you don't think how this decision will affect us long term. While I believe that Dr. Spence and his administration designed the fall 2020 plan and make the numerous recommendations with mostly good intentions and keep in mind the wide variety of people they are serving, they should not be able to circumvent the public and the democratic process. I did not stand in line for over 2 hours to vote during a pandemic for my elected officials to give away their votes. Decisions such as opening and closing our district schools should be based on science, facts, and common sense, and be voted on by our elected school board. Educators are drawing the line, and as a parent, I stand with them. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Stephanie McQuillan. Please unmute.
Welcome.
Stephanie, please unmute.
Okay, let's move on.
Speaker number 60 asked to be removed. We will move to speaker number 61. Monica Miller, please unmute.
Welcome.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. My name is Monica Miller, and I'm different from any other speakers because I am a Virginia Beach employee who is currently fighting COVID. I've been fighting to breathe for the last 2 weeks with my 5 children at home, 2 of which are autistic, who don't understand what is going on with me or with them. Saying that COVID is not spread in the schools is unrealistic. Currently, right now, in the school that I work in, 3 of the people that work in the office with me are all out with COVID. During this meeting, we have got an email from 4 schools in a bus route with COVID cases. The last time I got an email from my school with a COVID case was the 2 tonight and 1 2 days ago. These cases are continuing to go on, and they're not all registered on the charts that we are seeing. When you are working in the school, you do not know of a COVID case until you get the email at home. Those of us that work in the school know that this is not right. I have not been contact traced in school or out of school. I have a son that is option 2, and he is on the honor roll. Yes, he is the 85% of the kids that are earning above a C. The 15% that are failing, but that is really not a lot different than any other year. I cannot understand why you're acting like COVID doesn't spread between the hours of 7:20 and 4:30. Where the kids are out or in school, they're on their computers the whole time. You're losing teachers and staff at an alarming rate. Some of us have never stopped being in school. We have to work every day. Sorry, I'm trying to do this. Schools are not well ventilated, and to be in the school with hundreds of thousands of kids every day is not the same as going to a grocery store, as people keep trying to point out. How close is the person in the room beside you right now? Those of us that work in the school don't have that option to be that far away from another person. We just are basically told to suck it up and keep coming to work. Also, putting subs in schools for replacement for a teacher is not the same as having seasoned teachers. Hiring people off on a bus in the mall is not the same as having seasoned teachers. Why can't you take the time to let the staff get vaccinated with their shots and be safe inside the school? All we are asking is for us to be safe. It's not a lot to ask. No one can pinpoint exactly when you contact COVID, but we have got an email from Dr. Spence who has said that those of us that are out on COVID leave may not be paid if they decide that you didn't get it in school. So not only do we have to fight having this disease, we also have to decide if we're going to school or not, because people will go to school with the disease if they have low or no symptoms because they need to be paid.
30 seconds.
Out of my 5 kids, they only tested one for COVID, and she was positive. They said, oh, well, the rest will probably have it. So no, they didn't make the charts either for Virginia Beach City or the state. I just want y'all to think about someone other than just the students. Staff, teachers count, and so do the other staff members. But we're being brushed under the rug and told to just do
And
your
that
job.
is time.
That's what you're there for.
Thank you.
Speaker number 62 is not online. We will go to speaker number 63. Stephanie Corey, please unmute.
Welcome.
Good evening. Thank you for taking the time to hear me speak tonight. I'm addressing you as a VBCPS graduate, a resident, and a teacher in my 13th year, currently in the English department at Princess Anne High School. I'm deeply concerned with the plan to move back to face-to-face learning, whether in 1 week or 3. Over the summer, the board created a system and a plan. We were given specific number thresholds, and the parents and staff made decisions accordingly. It undermines the trust we have in our citywide administrators when we are told we'll be able to work safely under this plan, and then the board can just as easily decide to change or abandon the plan when it doesn't suit them. It especially undermines the trust we have in the board when they consider abdication in favor of giving the superintendent sole autonomy in the decision. The data provided in the most recent report sent to us, labeled as a report that supports a return to school, is not broad enough or comparable to our community. For example, one of the studies presented comes from Australia, a place where the lockdowns were so swift and so strict that their citizens were able to resume an essentially normal life. Meanwhile, here we are at 2 times the test rate positivity and 4 times the daily case rate that we were told puts us into the red zone. The data also focuses largely on the student populations, but what about the teachers? What happens when asymptomatic children come to school? We are the ones at risk. There are nearly 24 incidents of exposure over the course of several days just in the last week, since there have been only staff members in the school buildings. Communications from the schools have protocol reminders and emphasize that community behavior will keep us safe. This is obviously not working based on the numbers from the Virginia Department of Health. The school is not separate from the community. The school is a microcosm of the community. It is the board's job to make policy decisions that will keep us safe. You ask us in a normal year to plan, prepare, and potentially risk our lives during natural disasters and threats of violence, and we have to lead students through those situations. Those are unpredictable. This is predictable. We know how it works and how it's spread, and when prevention is possible, mitigation is simply not good enough. I and all other teachers want to do our jobs with excellence. We, of course, want what's best for the students, or we wouldn't be in this career. We understand the difficulty of virtual learning, as well as the economic impact, the mental health impact, because we bear those burdens too. You understand that this is not ideal, but it is better than sending us into harm's way because you think the risk is small enough. We want to return to school, but not at the risk of carrying home serious communicable illness to our families. And in my own case, the risk of increased complications and serious medical interventions as I carry my first child. Please let your teachers know that you hear us, that you really hear us, that you're not just doing this because of politeness or meeting protocol. Don't send us back to school until it's actually safe for us. Let us know that we can trust you to keep
30
your word,
seconds.
keep us safe, work together to represent all of us by continuing to discuss this as a group and not make decisions based on political optics or skewed data rather than common sense. Thank you.
Thank you.
Speaker number 62 was online, so we're going to go with Daniel Mitchell. Please unmute.
Welcome.
Daniel Mitchell, please unmute.
Hello.
Hey, welcome. Please proceed.
Good evening. My initial goal for speaking tonight was to advocate on behalf of Option 1 students returning to in-person learning on January 19th and February 1st, as those were the dates discussed at the school board meeting last week and again reiterated in Dr. Spence's citywide email that went out a few days ago. So imagine my surprise, or lack thereof if I'm being honest, when I opened a new email that was sent mere hours before this meeting advising that our superintendent is once again changing his stance, flip-flopping on the very same data he was championing a few days ago, and providing another hopeful yet not guaranteed later date to look forward to. To begin, I ask that each and every one of you weigh whose opinion you are listening to tonight and place importance on the opinions of those that will be directly impacted by this decision. Option 2 virtual teachers, former teachers, and high-risk families who want to stay Option 2 need not offer their opinion, as this decision does not concern them whatsoever. I also want to debunk the notion that wanting an in-person education for your child means that you have zero empathy for the well-being of teachers and staff. I saw the list of demands the VBEA once met before they agreed to go back inside the classroom. And while I agree that many of these health concerns can and should be met, I dislike the all or nothing mentality, as it turns our children's education into a bargaining tool. And if those needs cannot be fully met, our children's education becomes collateral damage in a battle that has zero to do with them in the first place. I find it highly ironic that we're continuously asking children to make more sacrifices when they've already given up so much during this pandemic. Meanwhile, we have adults who aren't willing to sacrifice any of their demands to help facilitate getting students who need the extra help back in the classrooms. Education is essential, and it's time that we start acknowledging that. Yes, virtual teaching can be done, and yes, some children may thrive in that environment, but there are plenty of children who do not, and we're not in the business of doing what's best for some children. We should be doing what's best for all children. There are plenty of issues that you guys don't see. Little Jenny, whose parents both work and she's struggling to find the correct worksheet, or Kevin, who's sitting at a daycare with 20 other kids trying to speak over the hustle and bustle of background noise, or the kid whose computer's glitching so they're forced to miss an entire assignment. These aren't college students we're referring to. These are 5-year-olds who are expected to manage a full 6-hour-a-day schedule, logging on and off numerous Google Meets, all while trying to stay engaged and motivated from behind a computer screen. My 5-year-old twins could not function a full day of virtual learning by themselves, but yet we're supposed to act like this scenario is the best we can offer children. It's time we stop blaming the parents for not doing enough. I stay home all day to solely focus on their studies. Teachers are not to blame either. We have the world's best teachers and specialists who go above and beyond, and guess what? Some days it's still not enough. It's heartbreaking to see a kindergartner complain about how much she hates school when all we've ever tried to instill in her is how amazing and fun education is. To be honest with you, this school board had problems that started well before the pandemic. COVID just illuminated what they already were. I've witnessed firsthand the lack of empathy on this board, the wasted time spent in board meetings that could have been better allocated to brainstorming solutions, and the lack of concern for true education while still pushing unrealistic standards known as the SOLs. We have board members like
30
Dottie, who advised a
seconds.
parent earlier today via email that she had made up her mind and was voting no prior to even showing up tonight. Why do we have people sitting on this board who aren't even willing to have an open mind, listen to the data, or follow the recommendations of the doctors that you hired for their opinions? Why waste their time if their medical advice wasn't good enough for you? The truth is that you don't hold the power anyways, as your organization's been running on a teacher shortage for a while now. So while I hope you vote in favor of quality education, I've stopped holding my breath
And that
that
is
change will
time.
ever come from this organization.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Erica Highsmith. Please unmute.
Welcome.
Hello. First, I want to start off by saying that I am a graduate of Virginia Beach City Public Schools, and now I have 2 special needs children who are enrolled in 2 separate schools. And I also want to say that no other special needs parent speaks for the experience of my children. I, for one, am very grateful of my son, the oldest, being pushed to be more independent due to virtual studies. First, I'm disgusted and disappointed, but not shocked at all by mental health being used as a talking point to try and push this narrative and use data that isn't relevant to our area or our communities at all. But what exactly are you going to do about these children's mental health when they walk into the building? Because I assure you that walking right back into school isn't going to magically make the problems go away. Things need to happen. And as stated earlier by other people, there are disenfranchised children who do not have access to therapists and psychologists and etc. So if we're going to use mental health as a talking point, I would like to hear and like to see specifically what you all are going to do to address it. As far as the mitigations, 6 feet isn't even being encouraged. Children, my own children, I have to constantly remind them and tell them to pull up their mask and put them over their nose properly because they slouch down. And especially for special needs children, there is a level of hands-on and hand over hand that needs to happen with disabled students. But disabled students aren't my only concern. All students are. And there are students who are telling you that they do not feel safe, and it brings them grave anxiety. I'm one of the parents who reluctantly chose option one because of the metrics set before, but now we are breaking records every single day, every single week, and I personally do not feel safe, and I feel like my agency has been taken away, and I can only imagine how teachers and non-educators feel about just being told to suck it up and go on with it. But I do not trust that you guys can properly do contact tracing. Do you really expect parents and children who went away on vacations or who go out of town or go gather and do things that we're not supposed to be doing to tell you that? Because I don't. So are we going to test all children before coming in? What are we going to do? You're not telling what you're going to do. And I would also like to point out the fact that it's not safe for us to be sitting in front of you in your presence. It wasn't safe for people to sit and wait in line inside. They had to wait outside. But it's safe for my children to go back to school, to be face to face with each other. How exactly do you expect to socially distance with the children on the bus? We can barely fit all of the kids in the classrooms and on the buses. I hear a lot of flip-flop and talking, but I don't see what exactly it is that you all are going to do. There's a lack of clarity. But finally, I would like to say rest in peace to Ms. Myers, and one teacher is enough. My children have
30 seconds.
lost enough family to this. I would not like to traumatize them further with possibly losing their teachers, their bus drivers, and all the other faculty and staff that they adore. I yield the rest of my time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Speaker number 65 is not online. We will go to speaker number 66. Courtney McReynolds, please unmute.
Hello.
Welcome.
My name is Alexis Fogg, and I would like to thank Courtney, who has agreed to voice my concerns for me, as I will be working in the ER when you meet. I speak as a parent concerned for her children, one of which was not afforded the opportunity to continue her academic progress virtually and had to select option 1.
Excuse me a moment. We have down Courtney McReynolds as the speaker.
Yes, I'm reading a speech by Alexis Fogg.
Not anonymous, who couldn't be here because of work. Right.
Okay, continue.
I'm sorry, my time? No. Okay. My name is Alexis Fogg, and I would like to thank Courtney, who has agreed to voice my concerns for me, as I will be working in the ER when you meet. I speak as a parent concerned for her children, one of which was not afforded the opportunity to continue her academic progress virtually and had to select option 1. I speak as a parent who is standing up for the teachers and staff who have documented medical need to remain virtual but were denied that protection, or are caregivers to an elderly parent or an ill child. I speak as a registered nurse who is watching the water rise in the sinking ship that is my ER and the ERs around me. I am an ER nurse who refuses to allow it to go unnoticed or be misrepresented when it affects not only families with COVID, but our children with sports injuries, grandparents with chest pain, families in motor vehicle accidents, and teenagers with emergent appendicitis. I want to start by saying that children should be running in the gym, hugging their favorite teacher, and sitting with their friends. These things are immensely important to the emotional, developmental, and social well-being of kids, and in turn, their physical well-being. Having consistency, routine, stability, and safety are also imperative. Sadly, none of these can safely be provided by schools at this time. To explain this stance, I will need to clear up a few things that were shared with the board last week that do not reflect the reality that my colleagues and I are seeing in real time. When enough staff in my ER have contracted the virus that I've lost count, when a nurse at Centera Lee can only answer, I don't even know how many, all I know is a lot, and my former coworkers in the ER at Beach know of 10 recent cases among staff despite wearing N95s and near OCD hand hygiene, no one can say hospital staff are not getting the virus. If doctors' offices, ERs, and medical professionals cannot prevent transmission, how can you expect a better outcome from children and non-medical personnel who are not even afforded proper surgical masks? This is not explained away by claiming risky behaviors or eating at a break room, and the majority of cases around me have been exceedingly careful. And if you cannot provide a safe place for your staff to eat, then you cannot claim they are safe. I understand that we were told in the workshop last week that bed availability is not a problem in our local hospitals. I have yet to talk to any boots on the ground that would agree with that account. I know that my 42-bed ER has often been over half full with admitted patients waiting for beds, 30 or more in the waiting room, halls full, and we've had to open our disaster hall. I am aware of a patient who sat in the ER at Beach with COVID pneumonia for 4 days waiting for a room. Note, this is not a HIPAA violation. This was told by patient account. There have been days where Beach's 42-bed ER held 35 admitted patients. Lee has routinely held 20 plus patients waiting for beds. We are on the front line. We do not see the picture that was painted, and it has been like this and getting worse since Thanksgiving. Maslow's hierarchy of needs is a theory in psychology that has been accepted and used in both mental health and medicine for around 90 years. It is the model by which we as nurses and medical professionals are trained to prioritize patient needs and our actions. The idea is that if the primary need is not met, you cannot achieve the next. The primary need is physiological needs. The second is safety. Third is social, then self-esteem, and last is self-actualization. Those who are saying that their child must go to school or their mental health is declining or will decline, I feel for them. I do. But demanding that others sacrifice their physical and mental safety for the mental health of others flies in the face of what both psychology and medicine have recognized for decades. As the flight attendants say, please secure your own mask before assisting others. Nurses, doctors, and EMTs have accepted the risk to self that comes with our jobs. Teachers did not sign up to take a preventable bullet for our children,
30 seconds.
nor share that bullet with their families. Demanding that they do so will only further alienate them, causing decreased performance, retention, and will ultimately increase your staffing shortage. I would like to address the concept that the virus does not affect children as much as adults and that the isolation of virtual learning is worse. To all who say it's okay if some people die as long as my child's mental health is supported, I say schools should then focus on supporting the mental health needs of these students and prioritizing at-risk kids instead of wasting time forcing an unsafe plan that is causing stress, anxiety, and depression by itself. The
And
push
that is
pull of
time.
face-to-face and quarantine.
Thank you.
I'm
Feel
sorry, was
free
that
to,
time?
feel free to follow up with, in an email. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Lila Goodman. Please unmute.
Good evening. I will try to be brief. I'm a parent of 2 high school students in Virginia Beach, and I've meshed some of my original points with some thoughts based on listening tonight. To the board members who are also members of the VBEA, it's clear that you will not go against the VBEA's stance, no matter what the data says. There's an absolute conflict of interest that a board member can also be a member of a group with such forceful views and influence, one that mirrors the actions of a union who uses threats and bullying tactics. To the teachers and students who spoke of extreme anxiety at the thought of returning to school, I do wonder if you've stayed isolated in your home since March. Have you avoided the grocery store, the doctor's office, gyms, restaurants, retail stores, airplanes, social situations with family? All it takes is one contaminated surface or airborne. So yes, walking into a Lowe's for a can of paint poses the same risk as being in a classroom. Lowe's does not take the same safety measures that the schools are required to implement. And schools are not going to be at full capacity because of options 1 and 2. Asynchronous days are not learning days too, as one teacher said tonight. In our home, they add to a never-ending 3-day weekend, with the assignment being finish any unfinished work from last week. Why not determine the number of students and staff who have actually contracted COVID and recovered and therefore now have the antibodies and are immune and no longer contagious? With such a large number of positive cases and a 99.4% survival rate, the numbers of those in our community that have already gotten immunity from being exposed, it's got to be a large percentage of the student staff population. Why are we not modeling a back to school approach like schools in places like Florida, South Carolina, Georgia, Chicago, Chesapeake? They've all been back to school, some full-time since August, and most of them are making it work with no increased risk to teachers and students. For every parent tonight who has said that their child is thriving in a virtual learning environment, there's a child who is failing with virtual learning. Tonight, I'd like to leave you with a quote from my friend who texted me tonight. She has a nonverbal autistic son who attends SECEP 100% of the time at Corporate Landing Elementary. Tonight, she texted me, "He is turning into a feral child. It took me 2 years for him to be okay going to school, and I will have to start from ground zero if that's ever going to happen." Thank you.
Thank you.
Speaker number 68 could not get online and she had to leave and she sends her regrets. We are going to speaker number 69, Sarah Shavati. Please unmute.
Welcome.
Sarah Shivarati.
Yes. Hi, I am a teacher and a parent in Virginia Beach. During the last school board meeting, data was shared that kids are falling behind and scores are dropping in some areas. There were huge problems with this data. From September 2019 till March 2020, thousands of kids were meeting daily with their teachers and support staff in small groups. After the closure, our division made a proclamation that there would be no small groups in virtual learning. This left educators dumbfounded. Teachers and parents voiced their concerns. We knew without small group instruction and live immediate feedback that we were not going to be able to continue to use best practices to teach reading or provide students with the same level of math instruction, which is why the data from last year shouldn't have been shared without complete transparency and should have included all of the facts. Frankly, comparing the data from last September to this September, is like comparing apples to cars. As you've heard from many speakers tonight, that data made no sense. Luckily, this fall, during virtual learning, we were allowed to run small groups. Currently, my son's teachers and I can meet with all students every day. Our time with students is productive. Most classrooms don't have safe and appropriate spacing, and there are not enough hours in the day to meet with everyone with all of the other responsibilities that have come along with COVID. In virtual learning, students have their own manipulatives, and they have learned to organize them and to access them. In face-to-face, it is difficult to make learning stations engaging where there aren't enough materials for everyone to have their own, not to mention how much time beyond teacher contracted hours are spent having to prepare this materials. It has been said that kids can't share materials unless they have been left out to air dry for 24 hours, washed and dried, or set out for 3 days, depending on the type of material. It was said that they can share as long as they use hand sanitizer between users. It takes time to sanitize, especially when we're issued one bottle of hand sanitizer and the paper toweling is more like a sieve than a sponge. Sanitizing and cleaning takes time. It is necessary, but these are minutes lost. In virtual learning, kids aren't losing instructional minutes, except on those days technology was glitching. For the most part, that has been fixed. My littles have learned to troubleshoot all kinds of technology problems. There is nothing more heartwarming to see than students who are chatting with their peers about learning and watching them excitedly move and dance and sing. Another positive aspect about virtual learning is that children aren't inhaling their lunches. We can have lunch bunch and we can talk with one another. Well, in face-to-face, we can't do these things right now. Our teachers and scholars can't dance, move, sing, or socialize about in the room like we can in virtual. Children participate in real play while in virtual learning. I want to be clear for all stakeholders to hear. I want nothing more than to be teaching face-to-face. And I want nothing more than my son to be learning in a face-to-face environment, but not when face-to-face and learning looks like this. It is a fallacy for anyone to say students are getting a great experience in face-to-face because in my opinion, they're not. In virtual, I am seeing children who were once shy in face-to-face who are now much more outgoing, self-confident, and participating in virtual learning. One student said, "You can hear me now." I struggled hearing and understanding some of my students during face-to-face learning because of masking and social distancing. It's been heartwarming to see my own student participating, reading, and learning day in and day out.
30 seconds.
Teachers have shared, high school teachers have shared that their older students can't log in because they're babysitting younger students. I think it's time for our administration to get out and about in our community and support these families. Why can't our administrators go and meet with families or develop support groups and help our guidance counselors and teachers and parents? It is in doing this that we can build a better community. I see that all
And that is time.
of this information about academies that are out there. And I also saw within 48
And that is
hours
time,
a pivot
Sarah.
on the decision about club sports. I have faith with a
That is time. Our next speaker is Allison Graves. Please unmute.
Welcome.
Good evening. Hello. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak for myself and my colleagues. Since March, I have been having a reoccurring dream where I was back in my classroom in a circle with my third graders. We were sitting next to each other and giving fist bumps to greet each other, and the shutdown was just a dream. Starting in September, my frequent dreams switched to a nightmare in which I was trapped physically inside the refurbished HP laptop I'm given to conduct my virtual teaching from. I kept yelling to the breakout rooms in Zoom and no one would let me out. Right now, I'm not having any dreams. While virtual teaching is by far the most challenging thing I have ever done, I am working longer hours this year than any other year. We are moving forward together. My colleagues and I have rallied to give our best to our students. Our best virtually cannot look the same as it does face-to-face, but we are celebrating many virtual victories, and yet we feel the continued pressure to perform at the same level and expect the children to as well. This pressure is hurting a lot of teachers. I keep praying it is a dream when it is our reality, a reality where I have teacher friends from across the district reaching out to me to ask for guidance on finding mental health care providers. Teachers telling me that they must cancel doctor's appointments because they don't have sub coverage. I have teachers telling me they don't know how they can go back to school and effectively teach while maintaining the increased safety mitigations and cleaning protocols. Teachers are tired, like all citizens. We can all agree that there is not a perfect or easy solution here. I want nothing more than to be back inside my classroom doing hands-on learning as soon as tomorrow morning. However, if a child contracted COVID in my classroom and had devastating complications, I wouldn't be able to live with that. From speaking to many of my colleagues, they feel the same way. That burden is far too great to bear. I've spoken to many teachers across the district, and the overarching majority is that we want to wait until our community numbers are under control and we have the space and tools needed to truly follow effective mitigation practices. I know I'm doing my part by staying home, following all CDC and state guidelines and social distancing so we can get this under control. We want to make sure the health department can adequately do contact tracing. We want to be sure we have substitutes for if we have to be out. We want to make sure that the safety mitigation team has an action and not just a title. So my comment isn't to tell you what to do. It is simply to tell you that the teachers and staff of VBCPS are struggling. We don't feel heard or valued. Teachers who selected option 2 or volunteered because someone in their building needed to feel disheartened as they have in many cases twice the class size and workload. No one seems to have a plan for them. As a parent, virtual learning is not ideal for my own VBCPS children with IEPs. We chose option 1 based on the metrics provided in the summer plan. However, during virtual, my girls are still learning. Their teachers have been amazing and go above and beyond daily. Kids are finding ways to socialize and they are learning. VBCPS may not be learning the normal way we did in January of 2020, but many of these students have adapted, transformed, and have cultivated a new way of learning through these challenging times. And for the ones that aren't, let's find them and do what our profession calls us to do every moment of every day. Let's take care of them and accommodate their needs. I don't know what the correct solution is, yet I urge you all to tap into those 5 C's and communicate with us. Keep us up to date on
30
changes prior
seconds.
to the general community. Conduct a secure survey to see how the individuals working in the school buildings truly feel. As teachers, we listen a lot. Please, as school board staff and leadership, take the time to really hear us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next speaker will be Rachel Anthony. Please unmute.
Welcome.
Hi, my name is Rachel, and I have 3 kids at Kellum and have watched every meeting since August, and I appreciate how hard you are working and how hard these decisions are. I am also here to advocate for the many teacher friends that I have collected over the years. Even though I can keep my kids home, teachers and staff don't have that option. And the saddest part is many are afraid to use their voice. There is not one that doesn't want to be face-to-face, even though virtual is more work. I see them collaborating and being creative to give our kids the very best education during these difficult times. What they don't want is to get sick, see their students get sick, or bring it home, or worse. Sadly, we have already lost a teacher to this virus. Why should we risk more? Teachers are also frustrated with their lack of cleaning, lack of distance, and struggles with keeping kids masked on properly. Virtually, they can just teach. 3 feet when feasible is not 6 feet, and 6 feet is the CDC guideline. Just like with classroom learning, virtual is different for all 3 of my kids. My junior is having the hardest time. Typical, he likes to fall asleep on Zoom. He doesn't want to put a shirt on. He doesn't want to get out of bed. But that's on me to deal with. I'm the mom, and this is temporary. It's a pandemic. I wish things were normal, but it's not worth the risk because parenting is harder right now. My senior and I are devastatingly sad that he's missing his senior year. Face-to-face won't change that. There's no hanging with friends. There's no ball games or dances or spirit week or anything that's fun about senior year. I'd like to now speak to the members who have decided to latch on to the mental health narrative because you are the ones that have me screaming at my screen the most. Mental health issues have been here long before this virus. My senior has suffered with depression and anxiety for years. His grades dropped, attendance dropped. He lost 45 pounds in 3 months. He also lost energy and passion for a charity that he spent 5 years building. Where were you then? No one noticed. But I didn't expect them to because schools are for education. I got him meds and therapy because I'm his mom and that's my job, as it should be. Years of his struggle with different life events triggering things it was he started having some better days, then lockdown. He is so fortunate to have many great friends, and knowing how important that is, I created a bubble to ensure my kids kept those connections, and it's worked out well. Within a month, I noticed he wasn't napping all the time. He was back to normal eating, and soon I had my kid back. By the third month, he told me he stopped taking his meds, which scared me to death. But he was doing great every day, not just some days, and he still is. He had first A's the start of this year. He's sad to miss his senior year, but he is happy and thriving in this virtual environment. Wasn't it just a few years ago a student killed himself in a bathroom of one of our schools? Many children struggle for many reasons, regardless of face-to-face or virtual. It's us, the parents' job to parent and take care of the needs of our kids. A speaker one meeting talked about their kid closes their bedroom door. Well, hello, mama, open that door. Some complain that their kids are isolated. Well, do something about it. Create them a bubble. Don't put teachers and staff at risk because it's harder to parent right now. And to Mrs. Manning and Mrs. Hughes, how about instead of using mental health to further your agenda, you provide resources and a plan to help
30
these families
seconds.
struggling with this issue, not just now, but also when we return to normal. How about stop putting mental health in a one-size-fits-only box and speak to all sides of all issues instead of throwing, because many are thriving in the virtual environment. Everyone wants to be back, but our community spread is outrageous, and soon our hospitals will be at capacity. Please care for the health of your staff and for the community we live in, and and delay these decisions until the spread goes back down. I am happy
And that
to
is
see the calls
time.
from Dr. Spence in this email today, though it's going to
And
take
that
more
is
than 2
time,
weeks.
Miss
I
Anthony.
am beyond
Thank you.
upset and
That
quite
is time,
disappointed
Miss
because I have
Anthony.
always respected you, Dr. Spence, that you was.
Our next speaker is Karen Luca Bernstein. Please unmute.
Welcome.
Miss Karen Luca Bernstein, please unmute.
Let's go on, please.
Okay.
Hello? Hello?
Hello, welcome. Please proceed.
Oh, okay, I'm so sorry. It started before. Good evening. I want to thank the school board and Dr. Spence for allowing me to voice my feelings concerning our return to face-to-face teaching. I've been an elementary school teacher for the past 23 years. I love my job and I love my students. In August, I chose the option 1, face-to-face, because I know my students learn better in school and I wanted to be in school with them. I agreed to face-to-face based on the proposed health metrics presented in August. I felt safe. However, I'm disappointed that the previously proposed health metrics are being disregarded without any face-to-face teacher or parental input or agreement. Will I have the choice to choose between the virtual teaching now, as the 2 metric measures numbers of the cases per day are at 1,188, max over 4.5 times maximum levels, or the percentage of positivity is at over 20%, which are agreed upon? Will we as teachers be allowed to change? I appreciate the plexiglass that was placed in my room, but when I cannot legally have more than 10 people in my house, how is it justified to have 20 students and 2 adults in a room that is approximately 21 square feet? The CDC states that masks are not a substitute for social distancing. Masks should be worn in addition to staying 6 feet apart. In school, we can barely have 2 to 3 feet between desks, and that's if they don't get up. When transferring in the hallways, to keep 20 students 6 feet apart would take 120 feet to line out of the classroom into the hallway and down the hallway. These scenarios are not logistically feasible, and without even addressing going to the bathroom. In addition to my spatial concerns, as teachers, we are also being presented with difficulties of unrealistic expectations to meet the academic needs to each student while upholding the CDC guidelines and including the cleaning procedures and protocols. Assisting special ed students 6 feet apart is not practical, and small groups can only have 2 to 3 students at a time. So I will not be able to meet with all of my students every day like I currently do virtually. I was exposed to COVID and had to be quarantined. Thanks to my forward-thinking principal, I was allowed to teach via webcam with an assistant as my hands and feet. Will principals be allowed to offer this type of accommodations to others? Will there be enough substitutes to accommodate for absent teachers? The quarantine process is a very stressful experience for both the one being quarantined, the students and members of their family and parents. Do we really want to incur more stress? I was informed yesterday that as of December 31st, the government support for the COVID relief leave ended, and it has to be proven that we are infected in school to receive COVID leave. With so many asymptomatic cases, especially in children, how can we really know where we've contracted COVID? Will teachers feel the need to come to work because they are short of leave? Will students come to school with Tylenol and their fever break at 1 o'clock in the afternoon? Will they be quarantined for 10 to 14 days and not have any instruction?
30 seconds.
I want to leave you with a couple questions. Will parents and teachers have the option to change? If contracted COVID at school, and hospitalized, will we get assistance to pay our maximum out-of-pocket expenses? If we're quarantined due to exposure, will we get assistance to take care of our families if we're a single parent or a parent of a deployed spouse or a caretaker for an adult child with special needs? If we die, do we have complications of exposure from school? Will our families get compensation?
And that is time.
Will we receive hazard pay as of other city employees? We as educators
And that is
sacrifice so
time.
much of our personal time and finances.
Our next speaker is Jonathan Durham. Please unmute.
Welcome.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Please proceed.
Okay. Before voting on any plan to reopen schools, I urge you to consider the whole picture that has been laid out by the many speakers throughout this evening. Your decision will affect more than the health and well-being of the students. It will impact that of the staff and the family members of the students and staff. Yes, virtual learning can be a miserable experience, and yes, mental health is of concern, but we are so close to it being safe. The vaccine has been rolled out, and it's only a matter of time before it is safe to return to schools, not just for our students, but for our community as a whole. From guest speakers to board members to the superintendent, we have heard over and over again that COVID-19 is not spread in schools, which is like saying the flu or the common cold do not spread in schools. Viruses spread. That's how they work. It is true that youth tend to be asymptomatic, but per the CDC, asymptomatic individuals do spread the virus. From the beginning, the guidance has been that asymptomatic people are typically not tested. Since youth are asymptomatic and therefore not likely to be tested, there is very little evidence to support any role youth or schools may or may not play in the spread of the virus. Research has shown that super spreaders are the rule, not the exception, and that children tend to be very efficient super spreaders. And while many articles have been written stating it is safe to reopen schools, those articles also state that it is only safe when proper mitigation strategies are followed and when there are low community transmission rates. We are in neither category, nor are we anywhere close. What about the long-term effect of the virus? Multiple studies have been published that show up to 50% of asymptomatic patients have longer heart damage. Researchers don't know if this damage will have a long-term effect, but this is another piece of the return to school puzzle. The only thing we know for certain is the data and evidence on the safety of school reopenings is incomplete and can be tailored to fit one's opinion. The indecision of the board and superintendent have continued to fail parents and students by creating an environment of confusion and instability. During this school year, Virginia Beach has not been the leader in Hampton Roads. Other boards have been able to stand by their decisions, even amidst disagreement, while this board continues to have one meeting after another, only to have those meetings devolve into some sort of dog and pony show. Today, the superintendent changed course due to new information, which is widely supported and unsupported based on comments from earlier speakers. Other than the continuing trend of high positivity rates and record high cases, the only evidence I can think of is the increased number of cases within the district that occurred after SOL testing last week, or maybe it was the start of winter sports. Before you make your decision, I ask you, is the 3-foot social distancing guidance in the current plan a proper transmission safeguard? How does the 40+ job openings for custodians affect the district's ability to sanitize buildings? How will children maintain social distancing on buses? How about the fact that there are no temperature checks for students or staff? Our community has an all-time high transmission rate, So can you assure parents, students, and teachers that proper mitigation strategies will be followed? If so, how? Just saying so is not enough. Include proper strategies and an updated metrics guide in a new return to school plan. I do not believe the superintendent should be given the ability to make its sole decision, but that's mainly because of the checks and balances a school board provides. Our students and families deserve to know what will happen instead of waiting for the next phone call to check our email. Make a
30
decision,
seconds.
stick to it, and stop failing our students and community. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Courtney Mikowitz. Please unmute.
My name is Courtney McSkevich, and I'm the parent of 3 small children that should eventually attend Virginia Beach Public Schools. But, however, they may not be if things do not change. However, today I'm reading a letter on behalf of a parent and teacher who wish to remain anonymous, which this school board should also take into consideration that many teachers and employees of this school system are afraid to speak up for fear of repercussions. However, here's the letter. I write to you as a parent of a first grader and as a teacher in an elementary school. You have a tough decision to make this coming week, and I pray you make the right one. I begin by asking you, if you were in my shoes, would you want you and your child to be forced into this situation? From the important and concerning questions I heard many of you ask at the last meeting, my heart tells me that you wouldn't. To be clear, I want to be back in the classroom, back to normal. Don't we all? But I kept my family safe and COVID-free since March. My children don't have play dates. I didn't see family on the holidays. I've lost friends who think I'm taking it too seriously. My children are going bonkers inside our home, and my 6-year-old doesn't do well with virtual learning. But none of that matters because our health and our lives are more important than that. Everything in life is temporary, the good and the bad. So we need to be grateful for the good times and know that when times are bad, they won't last forever. Virtual learning is temporary. It won't last forever. This virus is temporary. It won't last forever. Life is temporary. It too won't last forever. That's why we need to take care of ourselves and each other. We aren't living in an isolated Virginia Beach bubble. This is happening to the entire world. Learning is essentially paused everywhere. I remember a time when most people couldn't say they even knew one person who had the virus, let alone died from it. That isn't the case anymore. Our community is living the reality right now. We know people who have had it, and people who have died from it. We know teachers who have died from it. We know perfectly healthy people with no underlying health conditions get the virus and die from it. We also know people who got it, recovered, and seem completely fine. But just because that last point is true, should we take the chance? Should we return to school because the probability of someone dying is low? Or depending on what data from a specific time frame you are looking at indicates the risk is low, if it were your mother or father or sister or child that could be that statistic, is it worth making that decision on something that is simply temporary? Where are our priorities? Every single life is significant, and depending on the life you live, your perspective is very different. What matters is that we see each other, not see each other face to face, but see each other for the life we live in the situations we are in. What matters is we are aware enough to recognize the privileged lives we live and understand what that means for others. It's about perspective and priorities. What really matters? If you had to make a choice between missing your senior year in high school or missing your mother for a lifetime, which would you choose? We were told by one of the doctors last week, with this plan, people will contract the virus. It's a given. It's a reality. You as a school board don't have the power to make people stop socializing in large groups, wear a mask in grocery stores, or school board meetings for that matter, or stop gathering in bars or restaurants. But you do have the power to keep us safe and the power not to lose any more lives, no matter how few statistically they may be. You have a tough decision to make, and I appreciate the
30
time and effort
seconds.
you are putting forth. I have faith that you will do the research and ask the hard questions and essentially make the best decision for the greater good.
Thank you.
Sincerely, a concerned parent and teacher.
Speaker number 75 is a duplicate. Speaker number 76 is not online. We're going to go to speaker number 77, Brenda Harris. Please unmute.
Welcome.
Brenda Harris, please unmute. We will move on to the next speaker. Linda Schooley, please unmute.
Good evening, school board members and Dr. Spence. I've been teaching at Virginia Beach Middle School for over 20 years now, and I am speaking tonight to implore you all to stick with the original plan and not open the schools until we can all be safe. Reopening the schools to face-to-face instruction before teachers can receive the vaccine will cause undue stress and possible life-changing illness to us and our families. Believe me, we all want to be back in school and have things go back to normal. If we go back before it is truly safe, we will have to teach wearing masks from behind a plexiglass shield at our desk, teaching both virtual and face-to-face learners simultaneously. I don't think this works well for either group, and I lived through that for a month and a half in the fall, so I don't think it works well for either group. Please wait until the situation can be safer for everyone. Thank you for your continued support and understanding, and thank you for staying up so late.
Thank you. You too.